See throughout the night. I'll be joining Chris Matthews and Keith Oberman. We're going to bring you tonight's results.
Showdown. So who will win tonight? Who'll be smiling on Wednesday? Let's play hardball. Good evening, I'm Chris Matthews, and tonight the winds of change sweep across this country of ours. Whatever choice the voters make, the leading names on the ballot forecast American history will be made. We will either advance the presidential cause of the first woman, the first African American, the first real maverick Republican since Theodore Roosevelt. But no matter who wins what states tonight, the big news is already on the record book. For the first time, we're conducting what amounts to a nationwide primary, which has given a huge number of Americans the chance to share in selecting the nominees of the two major political parties. We've already got some news tonight. Mike Huckabee has won in West Virginia. But we begin tonight with the Democrats and with the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Howard Dean. Chairman Dean, Governor Dean.
How are you?
It seems to me that the law of unintended consequences has worked in its usual way against the purposes for which it was intended. Your party rules were intended to prevent the mobs from raging against the gate, to keep the establishment in power. Don't the rules work against the Clintons today by forcing proportionality and preventing them from winning big?
I think that the party rules have worked exactly just as we intended. We had 4 early states which were diverse, both geographically from every part of the country and ethnically. Every major voting group has been represented. And our candidates got out, test drives state by state, got reasonably well known, and now we're having the big test. So this is working exactly the way I hoped it would work. Proportionality
is so different in your party than it is in the Republican Party. Explain why you do it differently.
We do it differently than the Republicans because Thomas Jefferson, a great Democrat, when he helped create the Constitution of the United States, put something in there that it makes America unique among all countries, that is protection for the minority voters. So if you have a state that goes 55-45 in the Republicans, the 55 get to speak and the 45 are silenced. In our elections, a 55-45 state, both sides, both the people who voted for the winner and the people who didn't vote for the winner will be represented at the convention.
So that slows down the process from being a quick decision, right?
Yeah, but that's not such a bad thing. Look, I think you don't want a process that goes to the convention. I don't think ours will. I never thought we'd have a nominee by February 5th. Last year was an aberration. We had a candidate who won the Iowa caucuses and then hardly ever lost again. This year, I think we have some fantastic candidates, both of whom really represent change as opposed to what we're seeing in the Republican Party, which represents a third term for George Bush, essentially. And, of course, we want to take a really close look at them. Look, I think it's great for all these states to have a really good look at our nominees. And they're going to make a choice, and our nominees are going to be well known, whichever one of them ends up getting it.
Do you think it's good for the Democratic Party, as a party that wants to win this time, that you may not have a nominee until after Pennsylvania, to sometime in late April at the earliest? Do you think that's a healthy thing?
I think that's fine because people will get to know our folks really, really well. And I think that's really important. And on the Republican side, if they have an early nominee, who knows what they're going to be like in the general election. So, look, I think our system is a good system. I do want a nominee before we get to the convention. We can't win the race if we have 8 weeks to campaign. But I think it's great to have all these states have some say, and that was really the purpose of it.
Now, your party has punished Michigan and the state of Florida, the parties in those 2 states, for moving up their primaries beyond where they were supposed to. Are you going to let the Clintons dictate and say that those delegates are going to count? Because Senator Clinton is saying that the Florida votes and the Michigan votes will count, despite the fact that her rivals didn't even file because they filed your rules in Michigan.
Well, that's going to be up to the Credentials Committee, which will be actually elected by Democrats all over the country. So that decision will be made way down the road. But I think we ought to see what the voters say before we go down that far down the road.
Well, you did say, but wait a minute. You said that Michigan shouldn't count and Florida shouldn't count, and now you're letting Hillary Clinton say they should.
No, what I said was that's up to an elected committee of Democrats. I have 25 people on the committee. They're going to be about 160 or 155 on the committee that will be elected by Democrats all over the country. They'll make that decision much, much closer to the convention.
Well, what do you say?
I say the Credentials Committee will make that decision much, much closer to the election.
Why don't you take a position on whether you want to enforce the rules? I mean, you're like the NBA commissioner. You're like Larry O'Brien. Shouldn't you enforce the rules of your league? And the rules of the league were Michigan and Florida shouldn't count. And now you're letting one of the players on the field say, oh, I think I'd like the two to count because I won.
I think any candidate can say anything they please. And I don't criticize candidates. You know, my job is to support candidates, not to criticize them, and I appreciate the fight you're trying to start here.
Well, I want to get you in trouble because I want you to stand up to the winners and the losers.
Yeah,
both.
Well, you can stand up publicly on Chris Matthews shows, or you can say stuff privately. And in my job is to say things privately.
Well, my job is to get you to say something you'll regret in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's worked many times on this program
Chris.
with you as well as others.
With me as well as others. It certainly has.
Let me ask you about the voters. Do you believe the polls?
Well, the pollsters have had a tough time this year. In general, and look, I'm not knocking pollsters. Some are good and some aren't, just like everybody else. But they really have had a hard time and haven't been particularly accurate. I think probably for the most part that's not the fault of the pollsters. I think what you're seeing is wide swings in the electorate. It's not, you know, the thing that's so amazing about this election, the first thing is the turnout. The Democrats want changes so badly. In every state, including Florida, we've had enormous Democratic turnout. And that means people really want to change. Our turnout is doubled. In New Hampshire, for example, our turnout was up 20%. Their turnout was down 3%. So that's just extraordinary. But the other thing that really is interesting is how many undecided people there are. We have great candidates, really good people. The Republicans are undecided because they, frankly, aren't so crazy about their candidates. Our people are undecided because they love both of our candidates, and they loved all of the rest of them when they were in the race, too.
Governor, if you have a situation that looks like it might happen, who knows what's going to happen tonight? We're going to watch it all night till 4 or 5 in the morning to see what happened. But if there is a rough tie tonight, and there is a rough tie from here to the end of April when we get to Pennsylvania and all the way to the end, if you have a rough tie and Obama or Clinton win a rough tie, doesn't a team make sense? And if you don't get a team of the two of them on the ticket, doesn't that just alienate the half that lost?
Chris, it's fun to speculate on that stuff, but I'll let you all do that.
Well, you're chairman of the party. Can't you create a marriage here? Can't you say whoever loses is the VP candidate, whoever wins is the P candidate? Let's get together here.
Well,
you can do that.
If I were going to have a discussion like that, it probably wouldn't be on television. Those kinds of things, of course, those kinds of discussions go on, but this is not the time for those kinds of discussions. The voters have to speak first before people like me get involved and try to put together things like that. I mean, let's listen to the voters before we, you know, on television, everybody handicaps everything. I've sort of given up watching television in between these elections because people blab and blab and blab. But the fact is, it's the voters' turn. It's not the pundits' turn. It's not the pollsters' turn. This is the voters' turn. This last month and a half and this next 2 or 3 months coming up, this is the voters' turn. It's time for us to shut up and listen to the voters, and that's what I'm going to do.
Well, that's almost true, but my attitude is to try to figure out where to see an early sign of the decision-making tonight, and I'm going to be looking at New Jersey because I think it's an interesting state. It's a huge state. It's got so much ethnic diversity, African Americans in the big cities. It's got very wealthy people. It's got regular people all up and down the state. And it doesn't have a big media market. It's shared by New York and Philly. And I'm watching that state because I think that state, if Obama were to win tonight, would be a big win for him. If Senator Clinton were to win, that would be holding her strength tonight and basically getting through the night pretty well, holding what she had and avoiding any kind of swamping of the boat. Do you think that's pretty smart or not? Have you gone state by state trying to figure these things out?
I don't do that. I mean, I really have totally given up on doing that. No, I mean, honestly, nobody has the wisdom here. The wisdom is in the collective voters. And, you know, New Jersey is an important state. California is a critical state. Georgia is a critical state. There are a lot of important states out there. And, you know, I don't think what has to happen, Chris, is not somebody wins in this state or that state. What has to happen, which I think may not happen tonight, is there has to be a real trend. And, you know, this has been a very, very close race so far. And you know, first of all, I have no idea what's going to happen. Neither does anybody else, even the people who are polling it. And secondly, I'm very comfortable with the voters. Even when in 2004 when I lost, you know, you accept the voters' judgment. That's what it's about in the end in a democracy, and this is a great democracy, despite the best efforts of the right wing to undermine it.
Yeah.
And I think this is great. This, you know, this is what we all live for. Not the handicapping and the polls and the speculation. Watching democracy in action. Our Democrats are going to go out and pick the person who they believe would make the next president of the United States, and I am very, very happy with that.
Well, you must also be happy, and I want to say something here in tribute to you. I think 4 years ago you did a lot to activate young people, including one of my kids. And I saw him holding one of your signs up there in New Hampshire. It made me so proud. Out in front of the Palace Movie Theater at a big rally you had, there was Michael out there holding the big sign for you. And I do like the fact that I'm hearing from so many people that their kids are pushing them, as opposed to parents say, come on, kid, get out and vote. Just vote, register. And now you see kids, I don't mean kids, young people in their early 20s, late teens, telling their parents, pushing them to get involved. I think it's so refreshing.
It's a big deal. This is about change versus the past. John McCain and Mitt Romney represent the past. They represent the failed Bush policies, and I know John McCain says he's a maverick, but the truth is he voted for all Bush's stuff, including the tax cuts, the Iraq War, and everything else. And our guys really want change. Yeah. And you know, this is a transitional election. The new generation is taking over in this country. I think it's a great generation. It's a good thing. And I think that's going to help us in the general election. Well,
just remember, Senator Clinton voted the same way as Senator McCain on authorizing the war in Iraq.
Yeah, but she didn't vote to stay there. She didn't vote for $450 billion worth of deficits. She didn't vote to veto the children's health care plan, which Senator McCain voted for. Right. And she didn't change her position on every known issue in the political universe like Governor Romney. So,
well, that's easy for you to say. You're chairman of the Democratic National Committee. You can say this partisan stuff. I have to sort of understand the truth here,
That's
Governor.
right. That's
I'm one of your big fans, Governor. Thank you
Chris,
very much. You are, in many ways, a flawed pioneer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor Howard Dean, Chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Coming up, the Smart Viewer's Guide to Watching Tonight's Coverage. Chuck Todd's going to come on and do what I've been trying to do, trying to find out early indications tonight so we can begin to watch and begin to understand which way it's going early in the evening to see what might happen 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, Chuck Todd's coming up, our political director for NBC. You're watching Hardball, only on MSNBC.
I am just very excited about today. I think we should encourage everybody across the country to come out and vote in this unprecedented national primary. Obviously, there's a lot at stake. The stakes are huge for our country and lots of big challenges, but America's up to it. We just need a president who's ready on day one.
I guarantee you, as a nominee of my party, I can and will carry the city of New York as well as the state of New York.
That's hopeful. Anyway, welcome back to Hardball. 8 states are viewed as toss-ups tonight on the Democratic side. On the Republican battle, Mike Huckabee could help John McCain take the South. NBC political director Chuck Todd has what we're calling the Smart Viewer's Guide to Watching tonight's Super Tuesday coverage. That's a tough challenge, Chuck, to explain what's going to happen in 24 states tonight, but go for it.
Well, let's start with this Mike Huckabee-John McCain alliance, because, you know, yesterday we identified 5 states where we thought Mike Huckabee could tip the balance and help John McCain. And in fact, I did some math here. In these 5 states, we're looking at 168 delegates minimum that Mike Huckabee may cost Mitt Romney by just overperforming in these states, pulling that evangelical vote. But what happened earlier today? Well, we found out of this West Virginia convention where we saw the McCain-Huckabee alliance at work. This is another 18 delegates that Romney thought were in the bank. They did not think they were going to lose this thing. They were the only ones organizing for it. And yet McCain showed that they're a lot more organized in this thing than they realize, and that this McCain-Huckabee alliance is very real. And now we're going to see it probably pop up in a lot of these states. Missouri's very important because it's a winner-take-all. And Chris, John McCain may only get 37, 38%, and that's a winning number in a 3-way race, and that's winner take all. 50+ delegates there. These other 4 states are going to be proportional, but just Huckabee's proportion, you know, you get a bonus for winning the state. Huckabee's proportion is going to be taking all away from Romney, and like I said, costing him 160 delegates minimum. And we're already seeing it. You know, Mike Huckabee is going to be expecting more than just a really good speaking slot at the Republican convention.
So we're looking at those states, Tennessee and Georgia, Oklahoma, Alabama. How many of those states could Huckabee actually win? Not just deny them to Romney, but actually take them away from both other candidates.
Well, it's interesting. I think that you got to take a look at Georgia and Alabama, and you got to. And we've seen polls where in Missouri he's out polling Romney. So these are 3 states he could win. He obviously feels good about Arkansas, and that's his home state. He should do there. But he may end up winning. You know, he's already technically won West Virginia. He could add a couple more states tonight, and why doesn't he go on? And frankly, if Romney wins in a couple places, let's say he wins California and feels like he can move on, then McCain wants Huckabee to stay in this race. And so obviously if Huckabee wins a couple states, he will. We should take a look at the McCain states here. And this is what makes McCain an overwhelming favorite tonight to be the guy with the big delegate lead. And here's why. Every one of his base states, Chris, are winner-take-all. Arizona, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and my dot's going to cover it all up, and Connecticut. All 5 of those, this is almost 300 delegates that he's going to put in the bank. He could win by a vote or win by 10 votes. I mean, he's going to win. He's going to win in some of these places by a lot, and that's where he starts. Now you throw in those other states I was talking about, winner-take-all Missouri. He's going to get proportional, about a third of what's in those southern states, never mind California, and we already have him somewhere 600, 700 delegates tonight. That's just 300 or 400 short. He could officially end up the nominee, have enough delegates by the end of this month.
So tonight, if we look ahead in terms of indications, we could have a McCain wipeout where he denies Romney any states beyond, say, Massachusetts.
Right.
We could have a situation where Romney does nothing at all, even not just because he does badly, but because Huckabee grabs 3 or 4 states as well.
That's right, and then don't forget the clock tonight. The clock really favors McCain, right? We're going to have, you know, it's very likely there are early calls right here in those early northeastern states. They close at 8 or 9 o'clock. In prime time, McCain's going to look like a big winner. A lot of states are going to pop up that are his. It may not be, we may not find out that Mitt Romney has some mojo, but we may not find out until 2 o'clock Eastern time in the morning when California numbers finally come in. There's a lot of private polling I've been hearing about, whispers. Romney's polling very well there. In fact, I'll tell you, John McCain may regret that he has spent so much time in Massachusetts toying with this idea of beating Romney there and sort of putting a nail in Romney's political coffin, and maybe he should have spent a little more time in California. We'll see if they regret that.
Where he went this morning. Let's talk Democrats right now. It's far more alive, I think, fair to say. What are you looking for early in the evening? I've been looking at New Jersey thinking there's a state that, although Obama's been behind, he's moving.
Right.
And if he catches her there, it says he's catched her in a lot of places.
Well, it's interesting. You know, the Clinton campaign themselves brought up a couple of their base states today as indications that, you know, oh, if Obama doesn't do well here, that's good for Clinton. You're like, wait a minute, you guys were always supposed to do well here, and that was Massachusetts and New Jersey. These are poll closing times that happen at 8 o'clock, and I think you're right. If we're in the too close to call business at 8 o'clock in these states, rather than feeling comfortable calling these things for Hillary Clinton, that is going to tell us something. I think what happened nationally. Was it a bigger night than we realized? And then, of course, the other thing that I'm going to be fascinated about is what is Clinton's margin of victory in New York. It's very likely tonight, Chris, that Obama could get more delegates than Clinton, but lose more states. Why? Because the margin that he loses New York by may be much narrower than the margin, for instance, that he beats her by in Illinois. And the difference in delegates that he gets out of it, then what he nets, he may get a 55-45 delegate split out of New York if he really does well, and yet he may have a 65-35 delegate split out of Illinois, and that net, that's a big deal, particularly if the big enchilada tonight ends up being as close as a lot of people expect.
Who's going to win the Psy war for California? It seems like the Clintons know that if they lose out there, they're in deep trouble. It seems to me they're trying to spin it that if they don't lose California, they've had a triumph for the night. Is that the spin they can succeed with?
Well, I think it's more than just California. I moved to our toss-up states here for a minute so we can see them. We've got, I think, 4 states that together, if one candidate wins 3 of the 4, they're going to say we won the night. That's California, Arizona, Missouri, and Connecticut. All 4 have been very close. All 4 have those two different electorates, right? The Schlitz crowd versus the Chablis crowd.
Yeah.
Throw in the African-American vote, that's helped boost up some of Obama's numbers. Throw in the women vote, that's coming out in bigger numbers, and that's helped Clinton. But that's basically been the divide inside this Democratic Party, frankly, for presidential primaries for the last 20 years. Well, these 4 states, if one of them gets 3 of the 4, and obviously California being the biggest of that prize just rhetorically, that's a big deal. And it is interesting to me that the Clinton campaign absolutely now is saying, hey, if we win by a vote in California, we've won something tonight. I think they're very nervous about California, Chris.
I think they do win if they win in California, though. It seems to me that maybe that is the one that is going to decide tomorrow's big news story. Anyway, thank you very much, Chuck. Todd will be with you all night. You're our man. Up next, Robert De Niro came out for Obama yesterday. Guess who came out for Hillary today? It's the Battle of the Stars. You're watching Hardball, only on MSNBC.
The opportunity to vote for yourself for president is really something I had never expected to be able to do. It was a great honor, and it's very humbling.
MSNBC Super Tuesday is brought to you by...
So what else is new out there politically? Well, first Hillary targets women on the Hallmark Channel last night, then men on David Letterman. Here she is on the Late Show last night.
The other thing that I thought you handled smartly was this notion of, oh, if she's elected, you know, is he going to be in there, you know, going through stuff? You know, what do we got here? You know, and I forget exactly what you said, but the tone of it was just perfect, which was, please. You know, he's had his time in the office. It's now my administration. Undeniably, there will be a role for him. But to think that he was going to take over.
Well, look, you know, in my White House, we will know who wears the pantsuits.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, speaking of celebrity, Barack Obama is getting a last-minute boost from some high-powered Hollywood types. Chris Rock, I love him. Scarlett Johansson recorded automated get-out-the-vote calls for Barack, and singer Dave Matthews endorsed him on his personal website. And to counter Robert De Niro's endorsement of Obama, Hillary just got this one.
I think the Democrats are going to have a good candidate, whoever that might be. I happen to be in Senator Clinton's camp because I think she's the best man for the job.
I wonder what time of day that was. Now for some tunes. Take a look at this new music video from the band The Solids. It's called I'm an Obama Baby.
I'm an Obama baby, Obama baby, Obama baby. I don't want bananas, I don't want BP. I just want a president and no Kennedy. I don't want my naptown, I don't want my swing. I just want a president for honor and dignity. I'm an Obama baby, Obama baby.
God, they even got the Kennedys in there. And now it's time for the Hardball Big Number tonight as 24 states head to the polls on this very exciting Super Duper Tuesday. Let's go right now with the spotlight to one overlooked contest. Indonesia, where nearly 100 expatriate Americans went to the polls today. Remember that Barack Obama spent time in Indonesia growing up? Well, this may explain tonight's big number. 75. That's the percentage of the Indonesian-based American vote today that Obama won. 75%. Tonight's Indonesia returns are already in for Obama. Up next, their worst nightmare. What's got the candidates really scared? I came up with this question tonight. What scares them to death? Their worst nightmare. What might it be tonight? Barack, Hillary, Romney, McCain, Huckabee. What are they most afraid of tonight? You're watching Hardball, only on MSNBC.
Super Tuesday. MSNBC takes America's election journey around the globe. Watch breaking election coverage worldwide on MSNBC, the place for politics.
I'm Michelle Caruso Cabrera with your CNBC Market Wrap. Not a Super Tuesday on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 370 points. The S&P 500 fell 44. The Nasdaq dropped 73. The sell-off was triggered by data showing a surprisingly large drop in January in the huge services sectors in the United States. That includes travel, banking, construction, restaurants, and retail, just to name a few. The index measuring those sectors fell to a level not seen since 2001. That's the last time the U.S. economy was in a recession. Oil prices also plunged today on the services sector report. Crude fell $1.61 in New York trade, closing at $88.41 a barrel. Toyota reported fourth quarter profits jumping 7.5%. That was thanks to strong sales in China, Russia, and other emerging markets. That's it from CNBC, America's Business Channel. Now back to Hardball.
Well, we know what the hopes of each candidate are tonight, to win, but what's their biggest fear tonight? I love this question. Joining me is Michelle Bernard of the conservative group Independent Women's Voice, and Howard Fineman, of course, is our favorite MSNBC political analyst, and also, of course, Newsweek's political correspondent. Let me start with Howard on this question. Howard, let's start with Hillary Clinton.
Her biggest
worst fear tonight.
Well, her worst fear is that there's a tidal wave out there, and it's going to crest, and that even though everybody's been lowering expectations like crazy today, that Obama will do much better than expected, and even though the delegate lead won't be that dramatic, there'll be a sense of coming together in the Democratic Party. That's what she's got to fear, because she wants to lengthen the clock, lengthen the playing field. She's now asking for and has agreed to a half a dozen debates in every possible location and network. Obama, by the way, has yet to agree officially to a single one of those debates yet. That shows you the body language. That's Hillary's fear, is that there'll be a gathering sense of momentum for him at the end of tonight.
Well, when she agrees to do hardball every night for a couple of months, I'll know she really wants to extend this thing. I mean that in the best of spirits. Let me go to Michelle Bernard. Bernard, your sense of let's start with Barack Obama. What's his biggest fear tonight?
Well, I think his biggest fear is that he is unable to really shrink that gender gap. I mean, women have been pushing Hillary Clinton over the line in every single state, and you know, we've been watching the gender gap shrink, and I think he's going to want to get it down to single digits. I think he's going to want to win big in California. I think California and New Jersey are very, very important for him tonight, and I would say that his biggest fear is losing women and losing in California and New Jersey.
Let's go now. We'll run through this and then come back and catch up. McCain tonight. Howard, it just seems to me that McCain has two ways to win. Huckabee wins or he wins. Either one wins. It's fine with him.
Well, I know the people who run the McCain campaign very well. They go back all the way into the history of the college Republicans, and there's some people accusing them of pulling a maneuver of helping Huckabee in West Virginia just to create an early embarrassment for Romney. So they're trying to spread tax on the highway. That may very well be true. I mean, I think obviously the big fear for McCain is that he won't be able to unite the party, that even if he does well tonight, that whether it's Rush Limbaugh or Dr. James Dobson or whatever, or Rick Santorum, that this will be a rejectionist front that will just stay out there and live off the land and fight against him all the way through Election Day. These people are talking big, they're talking nasty. Whether they'll actually do it or not, I don't know. McCain is relying on the idea that if he does get the nomination, the prospect of Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama will be enough to unite the conservatives. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Sometimes conservative activists get in a mood where they prefer to lose. They prefer to lose.
Yes.
That's what they want to do. They love to lose.
I just think that's so true, Michelle. I think these guys like Rush Limbaugh, who I think is a great professional at what he does, would love to be the government in exile, have a Democrat like Hillary Clinton, especially Hillary Clinton as president, and he'd be in heaven for 4 years, putting her in hell.
No one is going to unify the Republican Party more than Hillary Clinton. You know, let's make that clear. I've got to actually agree.
No, I mean let her win the presidency, so the guys on radio can dance for 4 years on her grave. I mean, they'll just love it.
Well, I hope you're wrong about that, but I got to tell you, I agree with Howard. I think that McCain's biggest fear is California, and that having Arnold Schwarzenegger and Giuliani endorse him and stand out there in California. Those are not, there's a very disaffected Republican Party in California, and those might not have been the best endorsements for him. I mean, Ann Coulter has said she's going to go out, she's going to campaign for Hillary Rodham Clinton if John McCain is the Republican front runner and gets the nomination.
And what's that mean? No, really. Well, I'm serious. I'm dead serious, Michelle. I take you seriously. What does that mean?
I think what that means is that you could be correct, and there is a wing of the Republican Party, social conservatives, that would rather lose this election than see John McCain as the standard bearer of the Republican Party post George Bush.
Interesting. Howard, do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think that's the psychology of a lot of the conservatives, and I've covered them for years. That's the mood they're in right now. But I'll tell you, I'm paid to do my job, but I think I would pay money to see Ann Coulter campaigning for Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yeah, well,
I'm really hoping for that one.
You know, I can only lose by commenting at this point. Let me go to Romney. Does Romney have hopes left that are real, or are they just the good old American hopes that you can always pull it off? Michelle.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, I think that right now for Romney, what he is hoping for more than anything else is that Huckabee will just get out of the race. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about it. Huckabee's win in West Virginia is really not looking very good for Governor Romney. The more conservative votes that he takes from Governor Romney, particularly in the South, the more difficult it's going to make this race for him. You know, regardless of whether or not he wins in Massachusetts tonight, Huckabee absolutely has to get out of the race if Romney is going to be viable. He's only got so many billions of his own dollars to spend on this campaign.
Yeah. Howard?
Well, I think that's right. I think that Romney's big fear is that he will be rejected by evangelical voters. And there are a lot of them at stake today and tonight, and Huckabee's going after them. If he can win them in a place like Alabama and so forth, that'll be a statement that Romney would have trouble, even though he's got the sort of conservative commentariat on his side, that he would have trouble getting the Bible Belt to support him. And if Romney can't get the Bible Belt in the Republican primaries, he can't defeat John McCain.
Do you think the LDS thing has hurt him, and can it ever change, or is this something he's come up against, a brick wall, perhaps, of religious difference, prejudice, if you will? This isn't going to change 4 years or 8 years from now, Howard.
No, I think it is a brick wall. It's not all that visible everywhere, but you can feel it in the South, and you can feel it in the Bible Belt. And, you know, there's many a Baptist convention you could go to over the years where you look at the literature tables, and they've got books about the evils of Mormonism. I mean, that's just ingrained in the culture there, and it's a hard thing for Romney to overcome in that part of the country.
Okay, so we've decided one thing. The worst case scenario for the radio talk show hosts of the right is John McCain beats Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, but they would enjoy commenting on that one, too, I think.
Okay, Michelle, thank you for joining us. Howard, as always. Up next, the Politics Fix. This is Hardball, only on MSNBC. Welcome back to Hardball and the Politics Fix. Our roundtable tonight, Eugene Robinson of the Washington Post, MSNBC political analyst Patrick J. Buchanan, and Dee Dee Myers, former press secretary to President Clinton, author of the new book, Why Women Should Rule the World, a topic we will discuss at a later point. Nice. I love it, though.
Yeah, February 26th, by the way.
Is your pub date.
Yes, it is.
And we're already talking about
and
it.
We're already
The buzz has begun, and we'll help continue the buzz. You know, I got an interesting call last night. Everybody knows I worked for Tip O'Neill for all those years, the legendary Speaker of the House. His oldest child, Rosemary O'Neill, who never seems to get involved in things this partisan lately, at least, said to me, here's a quote, a letter she sent out to all her friends. Dad would have loved Barack Obama. Today's first-time voters would not believe that years ago running for political office was a joyous pursuit. Just when we needed it most, along comes Barack Obama. Dee Dee Myers.
That's a terrific point, that it can be a joyful pursuit, because I think a lot of the joy in politics has been lost in the intense media coverage and the rapid pace that things unfold, and the attention to tiny details and little nuggets from your past that you might not want to remember, and it's become blood sport. But to go back to the days when there was joy in it and you could lift people up is a remarkable achievement.
What I find interesting is children of all ages seem to be pushing for Barack. Yeah. And where it used to be, I said this about a half hour ago, it used to be parents, will you get your absentee ballot? Will you get organized? Yeah. Will you vote?
Right.
And now the kids are calling the parents and saying, are you going to do this the way I want it?
Yeah, no, what Obama has done so successfully, I think, is evoke the possible, suggest that things can be better, and here's a way they can be better. He creates this sort of excitement and optimism that, you know, that alone is a remarkable achievement.
Well, who knows what's going to happen tonight, but let's take a look at, this is a picture. There's no voice. It's in Swahili, what we're watching here, and I know Pat will help translate this, but we got Barack Obama. That's his mom, his grandma. It's just an amazing story. I mean, I was at Peace Corps. Everybody, Africa is so far away, and here's this mother of a presidential candidate. Patrick, your strong emotional feelings on this topic as a man of the world, a sort of a global kind of guy, you know?
Well, look, the Goldwater got the youth vote. George McGovern got the youth vote. The sort of idealism, the passion, all things can be done, and he's picking up that vote. But he hasn't walked into a general election yet. And we know what happened to McGovern, what happened to Goldwater.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, there's no doubt this is a tremendous wave, unlike any I've ever seen, and there's real enthusiasm and things. But this is an 8-month campaign.
When does preference become verdict? I've been thinking about it today, gentlemen, and Dee Dee, I've been trying to figure out, it's one thing to say, yeah, I sort of like this guy, I like the cut of his jib, I like his speeches, and then you get to the level of voting for him in a primary. That's kind of easy, too. And you go, wait a minute, do I want him to be the next president?
That's another leap. That's another whole step when you have to imagine him or her with the responsibilities that come with office.
Is that happening tonight? Will the results tonight tell us about verdict or preference?
I heard somebody say on a radio show, name one thing that Barack Obama has done, achievement. And nobody could say anything. It was one of these focus groups. That's when we're going to get into it. If he breaks through and he wins this nomination, he's moving toward it, people are going to say, where does he stand on NATO expansion?
But General, President Eisenhower was asked that same question of Richard Nixon. He couldn't think of anything.
If you give me a week, maybe I'll think of one.
And he lost. He lost.
Dee Dee, when does preference become verdict? When do people really make up their mind about Senator Clinton, about John McCain? And I say tonight he's the first maverick Republican candidate potentially since Teddy Roosevelt.
Right.
All right.
I think there are many stages of campaigns. I don't think it's a decision that happens overnight. There are many stages, and when you're working on a presidential campaign, you're struck by, as I'm sure the candidates are tonight, thinking this feels like a general election. How can it get any bigger? How can it get any more intense? Where do we go from here? I promise you tomorrow, if Barack Obama is as successful as we all sort of feel like he's going to be,
I don't know.
which is he's in it. I mean, I don't mean it.
I still got New Hampshire sitting in my brain, rent-free.
But I think regardless of what happens, he's going to be in it. He's going to be. He lives to fight another day, and I think the scrutiny goes up, and they'll think, oh my goodness, how did it get more intense than it was yesterday? But it will. And I think that process continues right on through November.
Let's talk about the early indications tonight. What are you looking for, Pat? What states are you looking at? We're going to be here. I mean, Keith and I are going to be doing the results. I'm just going to run through. Georgia at 7. We already got West Virginia. Huckabee pulled a victory there. You got Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Jersey, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, all at 8 o'clock.
I'm looking at Connecticut, New Jersey, especially if Obama wins New Jersey, Missouri, and California. And I think if Obama starts taking states there, winning the states, I think the momentum continues and people will say it is an Obama night.
Is this Obama spirit rising? Is this the great feeling of let's have an African-American, a young guy with an interesting background who can talk? And that's rare in politics today. Somebody can talk.
Yeah.
Or is it Clinton fatigue? This sitcom's just going on too long. We're tired of hearing what Bill's doing. Bill can't talk this week. He can talk. He's in the doghouse this week. He's not in the doghouse. Are we just tired of the sitcom?
Well, the tenor,
that's an issue.
The tenor of the race did change when Bill Clinton inserted himself in the race. When it was Hillary versus Barack, it was one kind of race. When it was Barack versus
things tend
Hillary
to change when
Bill.
By the way, things always change when he inserts himself.
Well,
I think it's
Go ahead.
Nobody can deny that Obama has a tremendous movement. It's larger than Reagan's in '76. It is really moving, and I can recall that so well going after Ford and falling short. So that's there. But I do think the Clintons...
Look at Michelle Obama checking to see how the husband, the senator's voting. I just love that scene. I love it, checking out the local votes.
The Reagan movement was based on an ideology.
Philosophy and a man.
And a man, but it was a man plus. And we're waiting to see with Barack Obama what the plus is going to be.
Exactly.
I think so far it's a candidacy based in many ways on biography and on the ability to live.
Okay, but isn't it unique at the time of American history? It's so complicated, figuring out the fiscal crisis, the world, the financial crisis, how a subprime mortgage in Cincinnati ends up being decided by some sale of a debt in France somewhere, or the whole thing going on with oil right now being $100 a barrel, and yet we're looking for candidates with their arc of their biography. John McCain, war hero. Hillary Clinton, first lady, senator, long life of interesting developments. We're looking at this guy, Barack Obama. It seems like we're looking for a great biography.
Well, but with Obama has one other thing, and I don't think you can call it a fully elaborated idea yet. You can call it an organizing principle, which is that we don't have to be locked in the same old arguments we've been having for a long time. That it doesn't have to be this either or. It can be different.
Are you deciding between the Bushes and the Clintons forever, like a Twilight Zone?
In the fall, you're going to be talking about big issues. You're going to be talking about, are you going to be out of Iraq in a year like you said?
That's
no matter what's
that
happening.
organizing principle has to be translated then into concrete
Will that triumph over the biographical competition?
Because the biographical stuff is everything now, almost. And then it will diminish dramatically, especially once he gets out in front and starts, if he gets out in front and is going for the nomination, the Oppo research will dump, and you'll be into
Explain what Oppo research is to regular people.
It's opposition research. And
it's dirt.
It's not dirt. It's you get piles and piles of stuff, and you read through them and read through them, and you grab
What's
out
that
the
feel
gems.
like when you're doing that, Pat, in the middle of the night?
We did it on McGovern. It's wonderful.
it's schadenfreude is what it is.
It's panning for gold, Chris.
Maybe the politics of the past, but it's still fun.
I'll never forget one of your old colleagues, Donald Segretti, once say, writing in the margin of his report, "Love this job." That was in the Watergate papers, yeah.
But I do think, regardless, one of the things that Barack has done is he hasn't just lifted his own supporters. The Time magazine did a cover story this week on young voters more broadly, and he doesn't have the overwhelming. He's not like he's winning them 2-1. He has, you know, a third or slightly more, 40% or something, and the other candidates have large numbers of young people supporting them. And what he's done is made the whole game more interesting, which is fascinating. And whether he's the nominee, whether he can continue to do that, who knows?
My
But
daughter
I think
called me
Pat's
the other day,
right.
Pat. You guys will love it. My daughter's at college, and she called me the other day, and she said, "We're studying the difference on presidential models of being president, and I'm trying to decide between the Greenstein model, which is the hidden hand presidency of Eisenhower, and the spokes of the wheel approach of Neustadt and the Kennedy administration." I mean, I am so thrilled to have a daughter that's so beyond anything I was at the age of 18. It's so great. I mean, I think
and you
kids.
just want to know who's heading the Oppo research, you know?
No, she's clean. No, but the fascination with the American presidency is so great. The people realize now, if we're going to be green as a country, somebody's got to lead.
You should see
if we're going to deal with peace in the world, somebody's got to lead. If we go to war, one guy can take us to war. Pat, that's pretty frightening under our Constitution.
Well, that's what
we have gone to a war that many people think was a disastrous mistake because of one guy.
One guy who was given a blank check by the Democratic Senate. And you know them all as well as I do.
And I never forget the list.
I never forget the list. I know them all myself.
But it shows
and they
the
wouldn't
power
help out. They wouldn't say no.
Right. And I think when we have war, it reminds young people, especially even without the draft, that presidents have enormous power.
The Senate may have given a blank check, but most presidents wouldn't have gone into Iraq like that. So I think the country looks at it, and it's still Bush.
Let me ask you about this phenomenon. We've all studied politics and been in it and covered it. The first time in our lives, the American people, half of them practically, are going to have a say today, and have already had their say, in picking the nominees of the two major parties. They don't have to sit around and wait till November and get stuck with a choice they didn't like. Today, California, it isn't at the end of the line like it used to be. It's right up there in the line. New York, not at the end of the line anymore. New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, huge states. What's it going to mean to the country that we finally pick our nominee in a big party national primary?
That is a terrific thing when you see the head-to-head races as you got in the Democratic Party and in California for Republicans. Let me tell you, you've talked about Huckabee. Huckabee, I don't think is going to help himself in the long run by this perceived collusion with McCain. If that isn't old politics, McCain's guys throwing their votes to this guy to beat the challenger and things like that. He's going to get the Lindsey Graham treatment. You know, Lindsey Graham supported the McCain amnesty, and he's in trouble in South Carolina because of it. I think Huckabee's hurt himself with some of this stuff, Chris. I really do. Because he had an image coming out of the South, evangelical, populist.
But what's his future anyway?
Well, it depends on whether McCain wins. You know, if McCain's a nominee. If he didn't win, Huckabee comes in.
I don't think Huckabee's on the ticket. I don't see that happening.
No, but I'm talking about 4 years from now. I think what Romney's looking for right now is tonight and 4 years from now.
I don't know. What do you think of Lieberman campaigning with a Republican everywhere he goes? I've never seen anything like this.
Right, but what's interesting to me is that a lot of the conservatives continue to beat up on Joe Lieberman. It's like they don't really appreciate him that much, I don't think.
Well,
the conservatives,
he's going to be on the Supreme Court.
They keep bringing up, you know,
McCain Lieberman.
He's a Yale Law graduate.
I
I am convinced Joe Lieberman has spent his whole life loving the United States Senate. He worked hard to get there. I think he wants to be a senator for life. I don't think he wants one of these other jobs.
I think it's from conviction. I think he's decided, he's always been very hawkish, and particularly on this war, and I think he's decided that McCain would be the best president.
He beat Ned Lamont.
He's not going to be the key guy in the Senate, though, because the Democrats going to pick up Senate seats.
Good luck tonight. Everybody's going to be here all night. We'll be staying alive on pizza and cookies all night tonight. Eugene Robinson, thanks for that nice line. line about the injection by Bill Clinton. It's your line, not mine. Anyway, Dee Dee Myers, it's your line. Washington Post columnist. Dee Dee Myers, thank you. Pat Buchanan. Do not go anywhere tonight. Our live primetime coverage of Super Duper Tuesday starts in just a minute, and it's going to go on all night. This is MSNBC, the place for politics.
In Boulder, Colorado, after weeks of stumping, one of Barack Obama's precinct captains is at this hour cautiously optimistic. Caucuses close there in 3 hours. The problem is, for the precinct captain, Neil Kornreich, bedtime is technically about 4 hours. Saying something perhaps about the Obama campaign and definitely something about campaign 2008. Obama precinct captain Neil Kornreich of Boulder, Colorado, is 12 years old.
That Barack Obama is surging, not even Hillary Clinton's camp would deny. But the exquisite and excruciating math of 22 states at once could underscore what one of his staffers said yesterday. If only we had more time. More endorsements? You stumping for me? You stumping for me? For many Republicans, his would be an ideal candidacy. Actual naval flyer, POW, projecting eminence. For others, watching his puzzle pieces, perhaps coming together tonight, is like going to see a Friday the 13th movie. John McCain versus a defiant Mitt Romney, with Mike Huckabee holding the balance. With Lester Holt in our exit poll virtual reality room, and Nora O'Donnell with the state trends. With the analysis of Tim Russert from Meet the Press, Brian Williams of NBC Nightly News, Tom Brokaw, Chief White House Correspondent David Gregory, Political Director Chuck Todd, Newsweek's Howard Feynman, Joe Scarborough, Pat Buchanan, Rachel Maddow, and Eugene Robbins, with Andrea Mitchell and Kevin Corke at Clinton headquarters in New York, Lee Cowan and David Schuster with the Obama campaign in Chicago, Kelly O'Donnell and Tucker Carlson at McCain Central in Phoenix, Ron Allen and John Yang at Romney headquarters in Boston, and Don Teague with the Huckabee campaign in Little Rock. This is MSNBC's coverage of the 21 Republican primaries and caucuses and the 22 Democratic primaries and caucuses, better known as Super Tuesday.
From MSNBC and NBC News World Headquarters in New York, alongside Chris Matthews, I'm Keith Olbermann, with Lester Holt tracking our exit polling for us throughout the evening from a virtual reality room, as you see there. Thanks for being with us. And Chris, I guess we begin with one question tonight. Giants or Patriots? Well,
We might have an upset tonight as well. Let me just say that tonight, no matter who wins, we're going to have history made in America tonight on three directions. One, perhaps the first woman nominee of either major political party, Hillary Clinton, of course. Perhaps the first African-American nominee of either political party. Perhaps the first maverick Republican since Teddy Roosevelt to be the nominee of the Republican Party. And the first time ever, a really what seems to be close to a national primary. So when people go in November and vote and say, I wish we didn't have such a terrible choice, now they have a participation in picking that person. So close to picking a nominee before you even get to pick the president, which is a good start for the country. Big night.
Before we get into the depths of the big night, is this the future? Is this what we're going to see? Are we going to see more and more almost regionalization of our primaries? Are they going to be bunched together like this, or are we going to have these mad dashes that we've seen in the first month?
Well, I think that the political parties always try to tie it up. The inside tries to keep the outside out, and they screw it up. Luckily for the American people, they're not that smart. The original plan of all this proportionality was to keep the rabble from the gate, to prevent an outsider from breaking the deal. But what happened was it tends perhaps to slow down the establishment candidate in this case. Hillary Clinton going into this perhaps won't do as well. Or it might turn out by 3 o'clock this morning that the outsider who went into this as an outsider will come out the insider, who could be Barack Obama. Luckily, they keep trying to rig it, and it doesn't quite work.
The people are smarter than the system, yes, and us, and that's encouraging. Right now it is 1 down, 42 to go. We have a winner in West Virginia. While the polls only closed 6.5 hours ago in the Republican caucus there, Mike Huckabee the victor in an outcome that set the Romney camp into paroxysms of anger against John McCain, trying to paint Huckabee as a mere stalking horse or proxy for McCain. Then there was a deal by which the Huckabee people got Ron Paul's support after the first round of the caucuses in trade for 3 delegates to the Republican National Convention. Now, we're going to have throughout the night a look at what's at stake around the states, the Hall of States, if you will. Nora O'Donnell manning that for us. Nora, good evening.
And good evening, Keith and Chris. And there is a great deal at stake tonight because this is, as we've said, the closest thing to a national primary we've had, the single biggest primary day in the United States history. So let's take a look at how it all breaks down. And let's start with the Republicans. It's simple for them. 21 states are holding contests today, many of them which are vote winner take all. And that means you get the most votes, you win all of that state's delegates. Pretty easy. The Republican delegate count going into tonight, McCain has 93, Romney has 77, and Huckabee has 58. And there are a total of 942 delegates up for grabs today. You need 1,191 delegates to win the Republican nomination. And I know it sounds like a lot of numbers we're going through, but these numbers are key tonight. The number of delegates will decide who wins their party's nomination. Okay, so let's go to the Democrats now. 22 states are holding contests today, including the biggies like California, New York, Illinois, and New Jersey. But here's where it gets a little bit tricky on the Democratic side. The Democratic delegates are awarded two ways. Clinton and Obama will win some of the delegates based on how well they do statewide. But they will also win most of their delegates based on how well they do in each congressional district. And it could take a long time to gather those results from each congressional district. So it's going to be a long night for the Democrats. It's going to be a long night for us here at MSNBC, but it's certainly going to be very exciting to watch as these delegate numbers come in. Now let's take a look at where it stands right now in the delegate count for the Democrats. Barack Obama has 63, Hillary Clinton has 48, and there are a total of 1,678 delegates up for grabs. Keep in mind, you need 2,025 delegates to win the nomination. We heard the Clinton campaign talking about today. They are saying this is going all the way to the convention. We'll see. This is going to be a very exciting night. And as I mentioned earlier, we are hearing it is going to be a long one as well. Back to you guys.
We're planning on it. Thank you, Nora O'Donnell. Joining us now to get an opening analysis of the night, David Gregory, our chief White House correspondent for NBC News, and Tim Russert, of course, Washington bureau chief and moderator of Meet the Press. We'll start with David. Boy, it's easy to say it's important. How about this, David? Why is it important?
Well, it's important because while it's not decisive on the Democratic side, it could have a lot to do with momentum going forward. Even if it's a protracted contest, it may in fact be decisive on the Republican side. A few signs to look for, and I'm sure Tim will amplify on these. On the Republican side, are we going to see John McCain tonight consolidate conservatives? He's made the argument that he is a conservative who can unite the party. Can he do it tonight on such a large mosaic, such a large tableau? Second, on the Democratic side, Barack Obama. Can he change women's minds tonight? That's the pitch he's been making with some high-profile endorsements in California and elsewhere. That's the wheelhouse of Hillary Clinton. He's got to begin to take some of those votes away. Lastly, I'm very interested to see what's motivating voters tonight. Unlike the previous contests, we're going to be in a big national conversation about what matters most. Is it change? Is it experience? Is it the economy? Is it the war? We'll learn a lot tonight.
David, thank you. Tim Russert is now in place, and let's start off with one of David's points, Tim. Republican unity. He talked about whether or not John McCain will get the opportunity to unify the Republican Party. Doesn't he first have to sort of tamp down the fires that have broken out, the back flames that have broken out in the Republican Party about people who desperately do not like him?
You're right, Keith. It's a prairie fire, particularly with the conservative radio talk show people across the country. And what they're trying to do is urge voters, conservative voters, to upset the apple cart, have Romney win California, have Romney win Missouri, have Romney win his home state of Massachusetts, and try to keep this debate going, keep this nomination fight going. The good thing for McCain is that is winner take all in many of these states, and he has Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee siphoning off those conservative votes from Mitt Romney. So Romney needs to score some victories in order to keep this race alive. But talk radio and other conservatives from the commentariat have done a very, very effective job at least getting their message out. Whether the voters listen, we'll find out tonight.
And Romney's people have already said siphon and worse about Huckabee relative to McCain. Tim Russert will get back to you. David Gregory will get back to you. We have our first results, not results from the polls, mind you, results from our exit polls, and for that, inside one of the technological achievements of the millennium with Lester Holt inside the virtual reality room. Lester, good evening.
Hey, Keith. Good evening to you. Behind this wall, we've got a lot of people crunching the numbers. This is where I will be, though, bringing them to you tonight in this hard-fought Democratic contest. We're talking Democrats right now. We're getting our first good look at how voters today feel about the big issues. And right off, we can see from our exit poll that the biggest issue is the economy. That's been true throughout this primary season. And on a Super Tuesday, it's true for Democrats. Nationwide, 45% chose the economy over the war in Iraq or health care, which came in a fairly low third. Now, as far as how Democratic primary voters today feel about the state of the economy, take a close look at these numbers. These voters were just about as negative as they could possibly be. An incredible 91% thought it was not good or poor. Only about 1 in 10 felt the economy was in good shape. On other big issues for the Democrats, the tug of war over experience versus change. Just over half say the quality most important is a candidate's ability to bring about change. Next on their list, named by about a quarter, is experience. And interestingly, electability has not been the major issue with Democratic primary voters so far. Only about 1 in 10 say their choice hinged on who could defeat the Republican nominee in November. Now let's look a bit more closely at those voters who are focused on change. Barack Obama has made this theme his own. You've seen the signs behind him at all the events. He got close to 3/4 of change voters, with the other quarter going to Hillary Clinton. With the field of Democratic candidates reduced to 2, we asked primary voters who would make the best commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. And here, it was Hillary Clinton who was the clear favorite. The first woman candidate with a serious shot at winning the presidency beat out her male rival. Look at these numbers, 50% to 35%. Keep in mind, this at a time the nation is fighting on 2 fronts. While Clinton wins that one, Obama is the preferred candidate on another quality that a president is expected to have. By a 54 to 37% margin, Democratic primary voters think Obama would be better able to bring the country together than Hillary Clinton. And Keith and Chris, we're going to be back in just a bit. We'll show you what's on the minds of Republican voters on this primary day today. But now back to you.
Well, that's 2 big victories, I think, in the polling. And we don't know the numbers yet, but 2 big victories for Barack because people want change are going to him. And secondly, people want to bring the country together going to him. If this were a Republican primary or caucus, I'd say who wants to be the best, who will be the best commander-in-chief, that would matter. I think with Democrats, they're less interested in who would be the better commander-in-chief. I think they're looking for unity and they're looking for change. And the one thing in these numbers that's good and solid for Senator Clinton is the economy. Everyone figures that she's been very good on bread and butter, kitchen table issues, whereas Obama has been more cosmic, more big picture.
But Tim Russert, apparently anything from the economy to electability to commander-in-chiefness it just pales utterly for the Democrats compared to this idea of change. And when we're asking somebody about a phrase like change, and it happens to be part of one candidate's catchphrase, if it's the word you see behind him at every event, that's overwhelmingly significant, is it not?
It is, but Hillary Clinton has gone out of her way to try to co-opt the word change as well. And Hillary Clinton voters will say that change is important to them. So we have to get inside those numbers and see some real votes before we can make a judgment as to whether or not some of the change agents didn't say, well, Hillary can do it as well as Barack Obama. I do think, Keith and Chris, on the economy, Hillary Clinton tried very hard this last week, particularly, to point back to the 2 terms of Bill Clinton, saying those were good times economically, and we can, in effect, bring you back to those. Whether that or not that argument resonated, I'm very anxious to find out.
But then they're making the argument, Tim and Keith, that that's as good as it gets. That's a hard argument. This is it's like the Jack Nicholson endorsement. I thought it was great because he was the guy who was in the movie, As Good as It Gets. And here she is saying, hey, we had it as good as it gets. Let's go back to the 90s. Weren't they swell? And I think that is the question, Tim. Do they think that's as good as it gets? If so, they'll go back to the Clintons. If they've got hopes that are rising higher because of this incredible oratory and promise of this guy Barack, then they're out of business. We'll see.
And does it bring back the notion of a co-presidency? Because the role of Bill Clinton has been diminished so much since South Carolina. It is so striking to watch that play out.
David, so many numbers here. Are we seeing in these sort of the conflicts between the exit polls, the various facets, the ones that Lester Holt just went through? Is this the essence of the debate within the Democratic Party and the debate about which of these two candidates it wants to line up behind?
I think it is, and I think Tim underscored that we're going to want to see how these actual numbers play out. Change being important, how much of that can Barack Obama get? Because this is a two-sided argument. Yes, the voters want change, but how do you get change? Are you inspirational, or do you have the experience in the ways of Washington to get it done? And I think you see on the commander-in-chief question, too, this ultimate sort of close your eyes and imagine a crisis scenario. Who do you want in the White House? Who's ready on day one? If the country is inspired and filled with hope and sort of moved by Barack Obama, is that good enough when he gets in there and he may be on a learning curve? So I think that there is a real contrast that has emerged on the Democratic side. Where you have hope and inspiration to kind of I have a dream versus I have a plan, as one Democratic strategist has put it. In the Hillary campaign, the Hillary Clinton campaign, a question of sobriety versus hope. Right.
David Gregory, Tim Russert, thank you. What's that movie? What's the movie from the 60s, Advise and Consent, with the ailing vice president? And he says, you'll learn on the job. Don't worry about it. The office will make the man. He goes, the world could go to hell in a handbasket before I'm big enough to see over the end of the desk.
Hell of a movie, by the way.
It is indeed. All right, let's go around the... we just endorsed another movie. Let's go to the campaigns. Let's start with Kevin Corke, who's here in New York with the Clinton campaign. Kevin, good evening.
Good evening to you, Keith. 3 E's tonight: emotion, electability, and experience. Obviously, you're going to hear the Clinton campaign continue to beat that drum. It's about experience. Of course, the electability, some people say Barack Obama has that advantage because in a head-to-head, perhaps with a John McCain, he would get more independents. But there's also the emotion of this particular race, and you're seeing a lot of it tonight. And I'm also reminded, Keith, that this reminds me a lot of what we saw right before New Hampshire. Remember, right before New Hampshire, there was that late surge by Barack Obama, and a lot of pollsters said, hey, look, he's moved out in front. And yet we saw that Hillary Clinton, on the strength of women voters, was able to get that victory. Also, we learned after New Hampshire that there was a great number of absentee ballots. In fact, I think I read that Clinton was 3-1 ahead on absentee ballots. The campaign is suggesting to me tonight that that could be the firewall that will help her not only hang on in some of these states where it's getting rather close, but maybe give her that much-needed momentum moving forward, Keith.
Kevin Corke at Clinton headquarters here in New York. One other note from there, Howard Wolfson, the senior strategist for the Clinton campaign, in a conference call with reporters this afternoon, saying at least 4 separate times, the results tonight will be inconclusive. That is covering the tracks to some degree. In a place where they may not be covering track quite so vehemently, David Schuster is at the Obama campaign headquarters in Chicago for us this evening. David, good evening.
Keith, good evening to you. The Obama campaign is simply hoping for a draw, and to them that means getting within maybe 75 or 100 delegates by the time the night is out, but also perhaps picking off a state that they thought several weeks ago Clinton would win. California, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Jersey. They want to try to pick one of those off. But again, Keith, their issue here is if they can make this nomination battle a war of attrition, the Obama campaign is convinced they can grind Hillary Clinton down. In terms of fundraising, $32 million that they raised in January compared to $13 million for Hillary Clinton. They can outspend her now in some of the states moving forward. The key for them is to get beyond Super Tuesday, where they say that they never thought they would win more delegates, get it to be a sort of draw in the eyes of the media and the national public, and move on. If they can do that, that'll be a very successful night. And now, as you can hear, they're testing the sound system. Keith and Chris, back to you.
Thank you, David. Let's go right now for a view from the Romney campaign. We turn to NBC's John Yang up in Boston. John.
Chris, the Romney campaign is hoping to harness conservative disaffection with John McCain. They see this now as a two-man race between themselves and John McCain. Not the race they envisioned at this point. They thought it would be Rudy Giuliani right now. But they're looking to southern states tonight, states like Georgia, Tennessee, to some extent Missouri, and to some extent areas of California like Orange County, the Central Valley around Stockton and Fresno, to see if they can draw those conservatives away from John McCain. The problem this campaign is facing that in many of those places they're competing for those conservative votes with Huckabee. And they see Huckabee staying in and sort of drawing votes away from them. And it's a tough problem for them as they try to move ahead. Chris?
Thank you very much, John Yang up in Boston. Coming up, we'll talk to strategists from both the Clinton and the Obama campaigns on how they're feeling this Super Tuesday evening. More numbers from the exit polls. And at the top of the hour, our first big contest. The polls close in Georgia. The first real numbers in what will be a very busy night. And we want to welcome our viewers for the first time joining us from across southern Africa. As someone who spent 2 years teaching in Swaziland, let me say, Sawubonani. We're coming to you live from our MSNBC global headquarters right now in New York City. You're watching MSNBC live coverage of Super Tuesday. Welcome back to MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday. Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick is supporting Barack Obama up there in Massachusetts, and Mayor Antonia Villaraigosa of Los Angeles is a Clinton backer all the way. I want to go to Deval Patrick for the first closing tonight. If you have to analyze a state which you have been elected in, Governor, tell me the kind of people that are voting for your guy and the kind of people that are sticking with the Clintons. Is there a way of describing them or judging how they're going to vote?
You know what? I think it's not quite as simple as that, Chris. Due respect to your question, I think that there is a broad appetite for a change, not just in ideas, but in our politics, and an excitement about supporting someone like Barack Obama, who has actually been a change agent, who has delivered that kind of change both in the halls of power and down in neighborhoods. I think a lot of the political establishment is organized around Senator Clinton, and she is a capable candidate to be sure.
Well, let's not rush to judgment on that one. You've got yourself, Senators Kennedy and Kerry, all backing Barack. Isn't that the establishment in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts?
You know, I was saying the other night at an event that I'm going to have to stop talking about the establishment as if there's someone else. I'm the elected governor now, so I guess I'm a part of it.
You know what? It's a lot more fun to be anti-establishment, I discovered in my life. Let me go to Mayor Villaraigosa. Out there, I've seen from the beginning the Clinton people, when they saw they're up against Barack and it looked like they might lose in New Hampshire, they immediately said, let's think Latino, let's think Hispanic, and they said, let's go where we can get some votes. They headed out, Senator Clinton headed right out to California. Is that her stronghold, your community?
Well, we've always had a 50-state strategy. We have a campaign organization throughout the country. California's always been important from the very beginning. We've been here for a long time, nearly a year. And yes, in California, the Latino vote is important. But as Deval said, and I want to say hello to him, he's a good friend.
How are you, Antonio?
That we're reaching out to a broad cross-section of the California electorate. We're fighting for every vote in every demographic group in every part of the state.
Do you feel that the candidates have had enough exposure in California? I mean, this is so lickety-split. 22 states in one day. Yeah. I know California wanted to move up, but do you feel you're getting a piece of the action, or you're just getting a once-over from these candidates?
Well, I think all of the states feel that there was a lot of attention in Iowa and New Hampshire. That's the way it's always been. But we would have liked to have had the candidate, certainly Senator Clinton, here in California. But they know her. They trust her. She's been to California for many years now. And there's a great deal of support for her here in this state.
If it was Bill Clinton on the ballot in California today, would there be any question as to who would win?
I think Senator Clinton's going to win.
Oh, you don't like that question, do you? Mayor, you hate that question. I know you're going way off in the other direction.
President Clinton would win in California.
Let me ask you a simpler question. This is Tim Russert again. If Bill Clinton was on the ballot, would he win easily tonight? Yes or no?
You're asking me?
Yeah. I'm asking the mayor.
I think he would win if Hillary wasn't on the ballot.
Okay, let me go to Deval Patrick. Governor, thank you. Tonight in Massachusetts, will it be a battle, as somebody said, between the Starbucks crowd, the elite college crowd, the gowns against the townies who go to the Dunkin' Donuts? Is this a class division, sir?
No, you know what? In fact, part of what this campaign is about, and what Barack Obama is about, is breaking down all those barriers, those sort of that shorthand that we use to segment and really set ourselves against each other. Right. I was with a woman out in Worcester, in the central part of our state, on Saturday, who came to the podium at a rally of several hundred people. She said she had until recently been a registered Republican. She'd voted twice for George Bush, once for Mitt Romney. She was going to cast an educated vote this time and vote for Barack Obama.
I've heard a lot of that. But let me ask you, what's better coffee, Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks? Well, how about for the price?
I like the coffee strong enough to stand your spoon up in it. So whoever's got the strongest coffee is good.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Governor, thank you, gentlemen. It's great to have you on. You are the heavyweights of our country. Thanks for being on tonight.
Thanks so much.
Up next, an overview of this historic battle for the Democrats from NBC's Tom Brokaw. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday.
29 minutes plus till the polls close in Georgia, and we may get the first characterization of something large in the coverage of Super Tuesday. This is MSNBC's continuing coverage of the 22 and 21 primaries and caucuses, one party to the other. No matter who wins on the Democratic side, history obviously will be made, either a woman or an African-American as the nominee. Time now to bring in NBC's Tom Brokaw to go into a discussion about this. Tom, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
All right, we were on with Joe Biden a couple of weeks ago, and he said it had been the dream of his lifetime. The dream of his lifetime to vote for a woman or an African-American for president. He just didn't think he'd wind up, as he said, sort of squeezed out by the process, but it was still breathtaking for him. If, with all the Sturm and Drang and really some below-the-belt stuff at earlier points in the Clinton-Obama fight, has this epic quality, either way it goes, sort of been overlooked in the heat of this nominating process?
Well, it has and it hasn't. At the same time, there's also a kind of a generational split here, because Hillary Clinton is a classic baby boomer, and as you know, Barack Obama has been running against the 1960s, so we have that going on as well. I have said from the beginning that while both of them will play to their gender and to their race strengths, in the final determination, I think it will not be settled by either race or by gender. It seems to me, going into today, Keith, at least, that the kind of conventional wisdom in this case probably is correct, that Obama is still attracting new voters, and Hillary seems not to have a lot of game left, if you use a sports metaphor. What she has to do is count on her strong organization around the country and hope that the clock will run out in her favor. Now, a big piece of the action this past week or so has been the endorsement of Senator Ted Kennedy. Having spent some time in California over the past 5 days, I happen to think that maybe Caroline Kennedy, her cousin Maria Shriver, the state's first lady, our former colleague here, and Oprah Winfrey may have been more important than the senator, because it did appear that they were beginning to peel off some women votes from the Hillary side.
The other aspect about this that I'm wondering if we are necessarily close to this forest to be able to count these trees and try to analyze what the rings say, and please stop me before I get any further into this analogy, but it struck me today. It really hit home, no matter who's participating, and looking just as much at the Republican side as the Democratic side. This is one of, already obviously, one of those turning point in history American elections, and if there was any doubt about this, about an hour ago, hour and a half ago, watching the late news from London, it was the lead story. The primary British anchor is in Washington right now. The first 10 minutes of their newscast, the last 5 minutes of their newscast, were about the primaries. This is epic. I'm wondering if we're losing the perspective on that too.
Well, I think it's the most important election in this country since 1968, probably. We are at war in two countries. We have been a controversial country in the rest of the world for the past 8 years or so. We are still the most powerful democracy and industrial power in the world, the most powerful country, the place that everyone turns to see what we're going to do next. We have this interesting cast of characters, more diverse than we've ever had before. So it only makes sense that the rest of the world is paying attention, because the United States drives so much of the rest of the world, and we do seem to be in for a sea change here. I think domestically, at least, this time, people are playing outside their lines. You're finding more Republicans who are willing to cross the line and vote for a Democrat, more independents who are either willing to go for a Democrat or for a Republican. I said a couple of weeks ago I thought it was the end of rigid dogma this time. Folks are looking for solutions and for new answers to all of this.
Oh, amen. End to rigid dogma on at all corners of the political landscape. Tom Brokaw and perspective as we start out here, really the beginning of Super Tuesday, not even the beginning of the end. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, Keith.
Up next, we'll focus in on the Republican race, surrogates from the leaders, analysis of what we've seen so far, and also from the exit polls, more with Lester Holt. This is MSNBC's continuing coverage of Super Tuesday. More after this.
Welcome back to MSNBC's continuing Super Tuesday coverage. In just over 20 minutes at the top of the hour, we'll get our first results of the night when polls close in Georgia. Then at 8 Eastern, polls close in 10 states, including some of the biggies, New Jersey and Massachusetts. Let's turn to David Gregory, Chief White House correspondent for NBC News, with more on the fight between McCain and Romney.
Well, it's been interesting. This has flared up again today over this issue of conservatives attacking John McCain for not being conservative enough. It's been all over conservative talk radio that John McCain has betrayed the Republican Party, has stabbed it in the back, and now he wants everybody to fall in line and coalesce around him. So this has been going on between McCain and Rush Limbaugh. It's Bob Dole, the former leader of the Senate for the Republicans, former presidential candidate, who wrote Rush Limbaugh a letter yesterday saying basically John McCain's got the conservative credentials. He's always been behind us on some of the big issues in the Republican Party, at least when I was in the Senate. That happened, and then it was Mitt Romney who came out saying, well, I think today Bob Dole's the last guy you want writing such a letter for you. I asked McCain about that. Actually, it was something McCain brought up on his own during an interview earlier today on MSNBC. Watch the reaction.
Someone asked Governor Romney about the letter that Bob Dole wrote on my behalf to Rush Limbaugh, and he said that would be the last person he would want writing a letter on his behalf. Governor Romney disparaging an American hero, our leader, our nominee for President of the United States, that's disgraceful. I think Governor Romney should apologize to Bob Dole for that comment. He's a great American, and for Governor Romney, who has never had any military experience, to disparage the service and courage of an American hero, I think is disgraceful.
Pretty strong words from John McCain, Chris, and I think there was a window there in that answer to some of the personal animosity that's going on between John McCain and Mitt Romney. Certainly from McCain's point of view, he doesn't have a lot of affection for Romney, and that came out in that answer.
Have we ever seen so many fouls called in a game? Anyway, thank you, David Gregory. Focusing on the Republican face-off between John McCain and Mitt Romney, we're joined right now by surrogates of both campaigns. Former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge, who was Pennsylvania governor. He's the national co-chairman of the McCain campaign. And Babe Buchanan, sister of someone very famous, is a senior advisor to the Romney campaign. Governor, is this the wrap-up time for your candidate? Is John McCain going to win it big enough tonight to blow out Romney and send him home to think about another business plan for something else?
Well, Chris, I think we're going to do very, very well in the major states, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and several others. California is still a toss-up. And it's pretty clear that Governor Romney intends on staying in probably longer than this evening. He's invested as well. He's entitled to millions and millions of dollars in the campaign in California. So I suspect, well, we're going to do very, very well tonight. I suspect the campaign will continue in the next several weeks.
Babe Buchanan, is California the key to a future campaign for Governor Romney?
You mean a future campaign or this particular campaign?
No, will he continue this campaign if he wins in California? I'm trying to find a way of judging this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question, California is key. The key, though, is the delegates. If we can make certain we get enough delegates to hold up John McCain from going over the top, you can see the momentum in the last few days is clearly with Mitt Romney. Across the country, conservatives are moving. They recognize he's the best candidate. He will stand for them, and that John McCain is absolutely unacceptable. And so if we can hold McCain up from going over the top, I think as the days go past, there's going to be more and more momentum, and John McCain's going to have a harder and harder time as he moves towards that convention.
Is Mike Huckabee the dog in the manger? Is he simply sucking up conservative votes that won't do anybody any good except John McCain? Bay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All Mike Huckabee is this ambitious little sidekick of John McCain's. He's out there just to throw everything he can to John McCain. He only beats up on, whatever he does, it's negative against Mitt Romney. But you know what he's done, Chris? It is an absolute outrage. If somebody is committed to the unborn as I am and as committed as he claims to be, what he's doing is he's putting the unborn aside. He's putting the sanctity of marriage aside so that he can get himself a place on the ticket with a guy who will not stand up for the unborn, will not give us the judges, and will not defend and fight for the sanctity of marriage with a constitutional amendment.
Well, is it true, Governor Ridge, that Mike Huckabee is playing Robin to John McCain's Batman. Is that how you put this ticket together?
You'd have to ask Governor Huckabee that. But, you know, this whole notion that John McCain is not a consistent conservative, particularly given the recent conversion of Governor Romney to some of these conservative principles that John McCain's held for 25 years, but Governor Romney got to them 2 or 3 years ago. And particularly in light of the fact that Bob Dole and John McCain and people like Jack Kemp, really at the core of the Republican conservative movement for 20-plus years, have to put up with this notion that they're not quite conservative enough from somebody whose economic record in Massachusetts leading the state to a point where it's like third in the migration of people out and third last in job creation is kind of an interesting approach for the governor to take.
Bay, can I throw a question for you, Bay Buchanan, about what Senator McCain said to David Gregory, that clip that we just played? Was there a strategic mistake made by your campaign in dragging former Senator Dole into this equation in those terms?
Yeah, you know. No, it's one more example of the kind of deceit and mischaracterization that John McCain has used continually in this campaign to deliberately distort the record and the words of Governor Romney. And when you suggest, and sit there, Governor, and even suggest to conservatives across this country as they listen, that John McCain has anything to do with the conservative movement in the last 8 years, that also is to belie the truth, is to misrepresent. That man was on the wrong side of the tax cuts. Conservatives are for tax cuts. He was on the wrong side of amnesty. Conservatives oppose amnesty. This man wouldn't even fight to secure the borders of the United States. He fought to keep the borders open, only figured that one out after a few months in this race. No, this guy is no conservative. He broke down the possibility for George Bush to put conservative judges on the courts. John McCain has been on the wrong side of every major battle and the conservative movement's had.
Governor, do you want to respond to that riff? That's a strong level of indictment against John McCain.
Bay, let me just start with the conservative judges on the court, Bay. Without the Gang of 14 that you and some of your colleagues are beating up on the senator on, you would not have 2 of the most conservative judges on the court. I mean, one of the interesting things about your candidate, and he's had a remarkable life, but I do think that he discovered that it's far easier to make money in the private sector than it is to create jobs, as I mentioned before, in the public sector. And the bottom line is that nobody is quite good enough for Mitt Romney. He's gone after Huckabee, he's gone after Senator McCain. Why can't this be a debate about real issues? And the fact of the matter is, immigration is a tough problem. It's a problem that needs resolution. And for all those who said no, the status quo remains. You have de facto amnesty. So why don't we elect the president who says it's a tough problem, it's a complex problem, it's a controversial problem, and I'm going to try to solve it. That's the kind of president we need, not somebody that waffles on issues and goes to Michigan. I mean, he will do whatever he can to do to capture votes.
Okay. I catch the drift here. Bay, can I ask you a question? Is this war in Iraq a conservative war?
Conservative war?
Yeah.
No, conservatives don't do preemptive wars.
Okay, thank you. Now I know where you stand. I've always believed in your thoughtful process. Thank you, Bay Buchanan. Thank you, Governor Tom Ridge. Bay is not totally in line with these people. Time now to introduce our panel for tonight, the host of MSNBC's Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough himself, MSNBC political analyst Pat Buchanan, brother of the aforementioned sister, the Washington Post's Eugene Robinson, and Air America's Rachel Maddow, the new rival of Pat Buchanan for airtime. Thank you, Joe.
Lots of luck. We have a lot to talk about, but let's start with what you're looking for tonight. Pat, what are you looking for?
What I'm looking for is Barack Obama's white vote in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Can he raise it above that 22-24% he got in Florida and South Carolina? If he can, it tells you this surge is dead serious. If he can't, it means he's going to lose the South. He'll lose all 11 states in the general election. Secondly, look for the Hispanic vote for Barack Obama in New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. This will show you the Teddy Kennedy effect. If Barack Obama, he has got to move that above the 1/3 he got in Nevada, or I think it will be ceding those 4 states in the Southwest, which are swing states in any general election. And if Barack can't break through in those 2 areas, then we're back to a red-blue race if Barack is nominated.
And obviously Barack Obama does very poorly with Hispanics out west, at least he has thus far. Gene, what are you looking for?
I'm looking first at Georgia. Georgia's a state where John Edwards probably would have done fairly well. I'm looking for where his voters go to Clinton or Obama, especially white men, a group among whom Edwards did very well. Neither Obama nor Clinton did that well in South Carolina. Let's see how they do tonight. And then I'm looking at Massachusetts to see if the Kennedy magic is still there. It's the state in which Hillary Clinton was way ahead for a long time. Now Obama apparently has caught up. There was a big endorsement. The state's first family is behind Obama, so let's see if it works.
All right. Rachel, what are you looking for tonight?
For Georgia, and we're looking at, what, 12 minutes till maybe some results from Georgia. On the Republican side, I'm looking to see how well Mike Huckabee does. If he gets a solid third of the vote, or if he even places second, I think Mitt Romney's going to be cursing the name of that ambitious little sidekick, as Babe Buchanan called him, all night. In terms of the Democratic side of things, Hillary Clinton really ought to get stomped by Barack Obama in Georgia. I think if she's within 10 points of Obama in Georgia, then he may be having a hard night.
And the two things I'm going to be looking for both come out of Georgia, and I agree with you all. The first thing is a lot of talk this past week about conservatives and whether they're going to rise up and stop the McCain movement towards the nomination. If John McCain wins by 5 percentage points, 10 percentage points in Georgia, it's over. Conservatives haven't come out. They haven't rallied behind Mitt Romney, and it's McCain's nomination. I think we'll see that throughout the night. On the other side, I agree. Barack Obama needs to win big in Georgia, or else we may be looking at another surge, last-minute surge like New Hampshire, that didn't pan out. Pat, I want to talk to you, though, about Bob Dole, because it's very interesting. When I heard that Bob Dole had written, Bob Dole, a guy I like, respect, but that I'd heard that he wrote a letter to Rush Limbaugh in John McCain's defense, I laughed because I've been suggesting that John McCain is going to be the Bob Dole of 2008. You wouldn't want Bob Dole writing to Rush Limbaugh, and it has nothing to do with war service, does it, Pat?
I don't know why Bob would do such a thing and step into this battle the way he has. He's not, look, Bob Dole has a consistent conservative voting record. He's not a leader of the conservative movement. He's never has been. And to do this on behalf of McCain is to get right in the middle of the fight. I do think McCain went overboard when he started bringing in the war record of Mitt Romney and all the rest of this stuff. He overreacted to it. Look, McCain's supposed to be the front runner.
Why is McCain overreacting? Why is he lying about Mitt Romney's record when he's leading?
You're exactly right. They're getting under his skin. He's fighting back as though he's somebody going down for the third time. And so I think he's not helping himself with this. He ought to play the front runner and dismiss this stuff and get up and move on the high road.
We'll talk about that some more, and also, Keith, we'll talk about, what, the little ambitious guy? Is that what?
Ambitious little sidekick.
The ambitious little sidekick, Mike Huckabee, who did the deal for his big man in West Virginia earlier. In just a little bit. But, Keith, for now, back to you.
Thank you, Joe. Pat, have Bay trademark that while she can still make the money off of it. Let's take a look at what we're learning from the exit polls, specifically on this. What issues drove Republican voters? Lester Holt's covering all of the exit polling for us and is back with that now. Lester.
All right, Chris and Keith, we looked at the Democrats last half hour. We're getting a look at what's moving Republicans as they went to the polls this Super Tuesday. What we're seeing is that for Republicans, the issue they felt most important to the nation was the same one that resonated with the Democrats. Take a look. Perhaps no surprise after what we've seen this primary season, it's the economy that's most important for these voters. It was chosen by 40% of the GOP voters. But just down the list, 22% named illegal immigration. Just about as many chose the war in Iraq. As far as how these voters feel the economy is doing, they're a bit more optimistic than their Democratic counterparts, who were overwhelmingly negative. Just over half of Republican primary voters, 56%, thought the economy was doing poorly. And so while a majority are not pleased with the economy, they are feeling fairly good in general about the Bush administration and what this president has accomplished. 64% give Mr. Bush overall positive marks on his job performance. He also got a pretty strong endorsement of his handling of the war. Among the GOP voters nationwide, almost 3 out of 4 approve of the way the war in Iraq is being conducted. Now, as far as what these voters want to see in their next president, the most important quality by far was a person in the Oval Office who shares their values. That was top for 47% of GOP primary voters. Most of the rest split between experience and a candidate who says what he believes. And again, as for electability, like the Democrats, they did not feel it was as important to choose a candidate just because they felt he could beat the other side in November. An interesting figure. And as the polls close, we'll be back with some more insight on why voters cast their votes for particular candidates. So a lot more to talk about this evening. But right now, Keith and Chris, let's send it back to you.
Lester Holt with exit polling. Thank you. We'll talk to you shortly. Chris?
Michelle Bernard is with the conservative group Independent Women's Voice, and I guess we're looking tonight for a big question whether women will do what they did in New Hampshire, Michelle, and back Hillary.
You know, I really cannot wait to see what's going to happen tonight. My argument all along has been that women are not a monolithic voting bloc, and I'm hoping that that the nation's women voters tonight will prove me correct. I think that we're going to see women voting for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama based solely on generational differences. There is a whole group of women, I'll say age 60 and above, who will tell you, for example, that they graduated from Harvard Law School first in their class and could only get jobs as legal secretaries. And I think for a great number of those women, they're going to vote for Hillary Clinton no matter what, because it is a statement for them. I think for other women for whom sex discrimination they feel has been non-existent, they're going to look with, they're going to look with wide open eyes. They're going to look at the candidates. They're going to look at who they trust. They're going to be looking for change. And I think a great deal of those women are going to vote for Barack Obama.
You know, somebody said the other day that it's a battle between voting for your mother if you're a woman and voting for your daughter.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think most women are going to vote for their daughters.
Let me ask you about this values question. On the latest poll we just got from Lester Holt, the fact that voters in the Republican primaries throughout the country today in 21 contests, including caucuses, are saying they voted their values. It doesn't strike me that that means they voted for John McCain, or at least not happily.
No, I don't think they voted for John McCain. I got to tell you, the numbers I find perplexing and really, really quite confusing, because the poll also said that 64% of the Republican voters today in exit polls are saying that they are satisfied with President Bush. And that really, if that number holds correct, it really means that social conservatives at this point in time, and again, it's just a snapshot in time, but social conservatives are in a minority of the Republican Party. Social conservatives have been very unhappy with President Bush. We've seen a huge expansion of government under this administration. There are people who are very unhappy with the Iraq war, with the economy, and even with the new budget. So it will be very interesting to see how many of these disaffected voters do in fact vote for John McCain because they are moderates, or vote for John McCain because he is the antithesis of President Bush.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle Bernard.
As we await to march into Georgia with those first numbers, NBC News political director Chuck Todd joins us now with a couple of pearls of wisdom to look for this evening. Chuck?
Well, Keith, I think the way to look at this geographically, let's start on the Democratic side, and let's start almost from east to west. The two big states early on this evening, I think, to watch for are going to be New Jersey and Massachusetts. These were two states that Hillary Clinton was counting on as sort of base states. Clearly, Senator Obama has been trying to penetrate or lead there a little bit. If these are states that we're not calling early, then, she might have a long night. This is certainly a couple of places that Obama would love to steal a victory here. We'd find out a little bit. Moving across the nation, obviously Missouri, this is going to be a big one. This is the ultimate swing state in general elections, and it's turning into the ultimate swing state in this primary. Literally, the state is very, coastal on the two coasts of Missouri, Kansas City, St. Louis. That's good areas for Obama. In Missouri, the middle part of the state, that's been good for Clinton. And then, of course, the two big ones tonight are going to be California and Arizona on the West Coast. These are going to be the two states where we find out, did Obama improve on this Hispanic number? Did he do better than what he has been doing, that 15 to 20%? So I think that's, and that's obviously going to be later tonight, and that's what could make this a very long night, but a very interesting one. On the Republican side, doing that same thing, I think there's sort of three ways of looking at the map. With the Republicans, you've got the southern states, right? What is the Mike Huckabee effect in the South? Does he cost Mitt Romney? I did some back-of-the-envelope math. 168 delegates he may have cost Mitt Romney there. And then the two other big ones, California and Massachusetts. Why? Did John McCain not spend enough time in California and spend too much time in Massachusetts trying to stick a needle in Romney?
Chuck Todd playing ring toss at the weather map. And we'll get back to you later on.
Right.
When we return, we're just minutes away from the first big result of this Super Tuesday night. Polls in Georgia will close in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Chris and I will return right then with the results.
Here we go. It's 7 p.m. Eastern, and the polls are closed in the state of Georgia. Our first state of Super Tuesday night. NBC News can project now that when all the votes are counted in Georgia, Barack Obama is the winner on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, it's too close to call in what is shaping up to be a tight, catch this, three-way race involving John McCain, Mitt Romney, and Governor Mike Huckabee. I'm Chris Matthews alongside Keith Oberman.
And let's head out to Obama's campaign headquarters for reaction 1-for-1 tonight, apparently. David Schuster, good evening in Chicago.
Keith, good evening to you. The reaction is going to be somewhat muted. They are, of course, relieved that they won Georgia, but this is a state that they had been counting on for weeks. A large African-American base for Barack Obama there. He had spent some time there, a big organization, a lot of spillover from South Carolina. Of course, Barack Obama won so strongly in South Carolina, so they had expected to do very well in Georgia. I suppose some relief now. And then, of course, Keith, as we were talking about last night, now the question is the delegate count. Out of the 87 pledged delegates, how did they do in each of these congressional districts where there were 3 or 4 delegates at stake? Did they get beyond the 68% to essentially get 3 out of the 4 delegates, or all the vagaries of the math? That's what they're going to be pouring through over the next half an hour, 45 minutes. But a sense of relief that they can strike Georgia off their list. That is a state they thought they would win. That is sort of now pushed aside, and now, of course, they're looking ahead at some of the more battleground states like New Jersey, like Massachusetts, some of the states that Chuck Todd was referring to a few minutes ago. Keith?
David, do they have an expectation of how much they have to win that by, where it's not a moral victory for Hillary Clinton, as we pointed out in the last hour?
Keith, they were hoping that in some of those congressional districts that Barack Obama would get between 65 and 70% of the vote there. Again, because of the vagaries of the Democratic rules, in some of the districts, if you can get the 67%, 68%, you get that extra delegate. Clearly, they were going congressional district by congressional district, and over the last few days trying to figure out, not just in Georgia, but across the country, where can they put in those extra radio or television ads? Where can they possibly pick up that extra delegate by getting the number, say, above 67%? So they're not going to know for a while exactly whether it paid off in Georgia, but that was something, of course, they were concerned about. They wanted to run up the score in some of these districts to try to pick up these extra delegates in places like Georgia, where they were convinced that they would run very strong tonight. Keith?
David Schuster at Obama headquarters in Chicago. First result of the night, and it's not even decisive. Let's now turn to David Gregory, Chief White House Correspondent of NBC News. David, more on this?
Well, you have to look inside the numbers here, Keith. And for Barack Obama, he was looking for African Americans and young people. And our initial exit poll data, we'll wait for the final numbers, looks like he got both those categories very decisively. If you were between 18 and 44, that vote broke strongly for Obama. And among African Americans, again, strongly for Barack Obama, a southern base, a state where both he and Hillary Clinton were competing hard for the African American vote. Also, we're going to want to watch, as we did in South Carolina, white men. Again, initial data indicating very competitive with Hillary Clinton was Barack Obama, maybe even with an advantage there. We'll look at the final numbers. That will be something that we look at throughout the southern states as well. On the Republican race side, rather, we see a three-way race here, and this is really the story for the night. Mike Huckabee very much in this race. The South is where he wants to make some noise. He siphons votes away from Mitt Romney as a sort of anti-McCain vote. But in this case, it's actually a three-way race, and Huckabee could end up coming out on top. So this is still very difficult to call on the Republican side.
David, one more question about the Democrats before we let you go. I'm going to read this right off the Associated Press and ask you if this statement, let's look at it as a political reality and a political campaign's reaction to a reality, as opposed to try to take the charge out of this. Let me just read this, and you tell me if this perception by itself would be a problem from Georgia. This is the Associated Press story on the primary in Georgia. It's Obama's second straight Southern victory. Like an earlier win in South Carolina, it was, quote, built on a wave of black votes. Is that trouble if that perception is allowed to stand?
Well, it is, but this is going to be a long night. And certainly Barack Obama does not want a narrow appeal, but he will certainly point to strength among white male voters, for instance, among young voters as well. This is going to be a base of support, but he wants to demonstrate wider appeal. We'll look closely for that. and he knows that he needs that. Don't forget the South Carolina story. You remember that Bill Clinton statement by saying, well, Jesse Jackson did well in South Carolina as well. In other words, he's just an African-American candidate with that sort of appeal. You look into the interior of the country, Idaho, Minnesota, where there's not very large African-American populations, and Barack Obama has been running strong. That's where he will try to belie that perception.
David Gregory, great thanks.
Now let's get more from our exit poll on how Barack Obama did win in Georgia, and for that we go to Lester Holt.
All right, Chris and Keith, our exit poll tells the story of how Barack Obama won an easy victory in that state. It starts with the makeup of Georgia's Democratic primary electorate. Black voters today made up 52% of the voters statewide. That's almost as great a share as we saw in South Carolina, where they were 55% of total. The African-American vote was expected to go heavily to Barack Obama, and according to our exit poll data, that is exactly what happened. Obama captured 86% of the black vote in Georgia, with Clinton getting only 13%. But the big difference was among white voters. Today, the Illinois senator got 43% of the white Democratic vote in Georgia, significantly better than the 24% he received in last month's South Carolina and Florida primaries. Also, while Obama has repeatedly done well with young voters in the Peachtree State, his appeal was not limited to that age group. In fact, he got about half of the vote among white baby boomers ages 40 to 59. That's marginally better than the 43% whites under 40 gave him. Similar to what we've seen elsewhere, white voters over 60 are least likely to support him. He got only about a quarter of their vote. Obama's cross-racial appeal is also seen in voter perceptions of him as a unifying figure. When asked which candidate is best qualified to unite the country, nearly two-thirds of Democratic primary voters in Georgia think Obama is better suited to get the job done. This compares with only 3 in 10 who say Hillary Clinton is better equipped to do this. So we're getting a very good look at which groups broke for Barack Obama in Georgia, his win there, and we're going to watch these groups throughout the night as we see other states called across the country. Gentlemen, let's go back to you now.
All right, thanks very much, Lester. 54-43, Clinton over Obama in the exit polls among non-African-American voters in Georgia. So that's a pretty high number for Obama.
Yeah, he's moving up there. Let's go right now. Thank you, Lester. Let's go right now for a reaction from the panel. Joe Scarborough.
Thank you so much, Chris Matthews. You know, there's a lot of times that you look at these exit polls and you just sort of rub your eyes. Not this time. Pat Buchanan, this is big. Remember, a week before South Carolina, only 10% of South Carolina voters, white voters, supported Obama. By Election Day, it was 25%. Now in Georgia, 43% of white voters are on Barack Obama's side. He gets 86% of African-American voters. That, Pat, is a coalition that he can win with nationwide, isn't it?
Well, look, and this is a tremendous number. He got, as I say, 22 and 24% in South Carolina and Florida. Now he's virtually doubled that to 43%. There's still resistance in folks over 60 years old in the South, but that's a good number. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he lost it, was it 54 to 43? But you can't deny that's a terrific game.
Rachel, I'm going to talk about Pat and pretend like he's not here. Whenever we talk about Barack Obama, Pat Buchanan sort of laughs and chortles. I'm excited, thinking that this guy may be a new face of politics that can unite America. Now, ideology, you know, will I vote for him? Who knows? But younger voters seem to get Barack Obama. Older voters don't. And I think we're seeing that here, aren't we?
Well, but we also saw from 40 to 59-year-olds in Georgia, he got 49% of the vote. Now, 40 to 59, you call that old or call that not old, depending on when you were born.
Right.
But that doesn't, you know, that's not a bunch of college kids, and that's a significant. He got half of that vote. So the question, the reason that people get agitated over the idea of a youth vote propelling a candidate to victory is because there is this theory that young voters never show up. Well, not only do young voters support Barack Obama, but they show up when he's on the ballot, and he's starting to appeal to people outside that young age group.
And also, when you talk about 40 to 59, that is an important age group. It's not 60 and over, but it's the next most important age group. Gene, he's starting to put together a coalition in Georgia, Deep South.
Deep South. I'm going to back up for a minute and go back to that original figure.
This is the Deep South. He gets 43% of white voters. This may be a harbinger of things to come tonight.
Well, you know, when you and I were growing up, we wouldn't have thought that that was going to happen, that an African-American candidate would get, you know, more than 4 out of 10 white votes in a state like Georgia.
Especially in a presidential race.
In a presidential race. I mean, that's incredible. And I'd say it's a very good start it's early, but it's a good start to the evening for Obama.
That number, 86% of the African-American vote, is what you expect the Democratic candidate to get entirely in a general election, and he's gotten it against Hillary Rodham Clinton, basically a moderate liberal Democrat in the South, the wife of the President of the United States, our first black president, and she gets 13% of the black vote.
Pat, that is great. That is great news for Barack Obama. It is bad news for Hillary Clinton. But as the night goes on, and as the results come in, and we start going west, Rachel Maddow, suddenly the battle is going to be in the Democratic Party between African Americans and Hispanics, because African Americans may go 8 out of 10 for Barack Obama. Hispanics, though, most likely will go 6 out of 7 for Hillary Clinton.
I think it won't go that much. I mean, he won 1/3 in Nevada. If Hillary gets 2/3, that'll maintain it. But if he starts getting 40% there, frankly, it's bad news first and foremost for Hillary.
Rachel, what we have to look for, though, when we look at these identity groups, is how much impact did Ted Kennedy have? Can he bring 40% of Hispanic voters over? If so, with these numbers, then Barack Obama is going to have a huge night.
Well, what remains to be seen is what the overall spread is between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton in Georgia. Right now, he was polling about 20 points ahead of Hillary Clinton heading into today. And so if he beat that spread, or if he came in underneath that spread, it's going to tell us how big a result this is for him. But in California, he's pulling as much of the African-American vote as she is pulling the Latino vote. So it's going to be...
Latino vote's about 3 times as big in California.
It is. It is. Tom Brokaw said this morning 60% of all children in elementary school in California are Hispanic. That's how big the vote is, the Hispanic vote is out in California and out west. All right, so the big news, Keith, obviously 43% of white voters in Georgia, in the deep South, in the heart of Dixie, going for an African-American. That's newsworthy. Back to you.
Yeah, but I don't want to give anything away from the exit polls, but if you ever took a standardized test, we gave you enough information for you to walk back on your DVR device and figure out what the vote totals were projected from the exit polls, even though we're not supposed to give it to you if we gave it to you based on African-American voters and what percentage they are of the whole and non-African. If you would like to go and do that, go right ahead. I know Joe is doing it right now. He's got his abacus out as we speak. In the interim, let's continue the analysis with Tom Brokaw about Barack Obama as the projected winner in Georgia, and by these margins, and on the Republican side, this same three-way split that has defined the GOP race so far. Does that deadlock break tonight, Tom, and if so, why?
Well, let me begin with the Democrats, if I can, first of all. We may be, once again, paying far too much attention to conventional wisdom. I've been spending a fair amount of time in the South recently, and I have been so struck by the social and racial dynamic in cities like Atlanta, in which they're not just integrated on a daily basis at work, but they're socially integrated as well. And there are what I call now the children and the grandchildren of Dr. Martin Luther King who are taking their place in Georgia and in other states across the South. I was at Ole Miss recently, and I met the president of the Ole Miss Alumni Association. She was an African-American woman. It's that kind of change that will play well for Barack Obama, not just on a primary night, but if he should be the nominee as well. So I think that we ought not to use the past models in this election, especially when people are looking for new answers and new solutions. And obviously his impressive showing there tonight will probably serve him well. On the Republican side, what is so striking to me is that this internecine feud that is going on within the Republican Party, and we're seeing that play out in the South as well. In Pat Buchanan's old party, there's almost always been a kind of marshaling behind a candidate at some point and saying, this is how we march forward. Not this time, and you're seeing it play out in Georgia, and I suspect we will the rest of the night as well.
The first part, Tom, obviously the past is useful as contrast, and it's I guess it's a great thing for everybody of all stripe politically and all ethnic and racial background in this country to look back at some point at the results that we saw in the past and go, I can't understand why it happened that way. It seems like it's happening now entirely on merit, which would be a good thing to be able to judge.
Look, the fact is, Keith, race is still with us, and it still will be a factor, but it's less of a factor, especially for young people, every day. That's what's very heartening here. When I was in South Carolina, I met a young African-American lawyer that I've known for a while, and he said, you know, in our generation, we just don't talk about it or think about it as much as you all do. And they've grown up in a much more integrated culture. As they look at television, they see television commercials with black professionals and black middle-class people. There's a whole new, as you know, class of black professionals across this country in all the fields. And so folks are much more at ease with it now. And we're not over it entirely. I want to be entirely clear about that. But there are big strides that are being made. And as I said earlier, I don't think that this election will be settled just on gender or race alone. People are taking the measure of these candidates.
Tom Brokaw, we'll be back with you later on. Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
And coming up, more exit polls, more results. Polls in 9 states closing 44 minutes hence at 8 Eastern. You are watching MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday.
The first big winner in Georgia. Welcome back to MSNBC's live Super Tuesday coverage. Barack Obama is the projected winner in the first state of the night, the Peach State, Georgia. And on the Republican side, it's simply too close to call in a tight three-way race among John McCain, Mitt Romney, and Mike Huckabee. NBC News political director Chuck Todd is with us now for a look at the delegate apportionment as it stands right now. Chuck.
Well, Chris, we did some quick little estimates based on what the exit poll is showing us on the regional breakdown, plus what we're hearing on the ground, both from the Clinton campaign and from the Obama campaign. And it looks like the best case scenario for Obama may come true out of Georgia, that he may end up netting some 35 delegate advantage out of Georgia over her, particularly if his numbers are as high as they are in certain parts of the state, particularly in those African-American precincts. One estimate that we came up with has him getting 60 of the 87 delegates, which would be a much greater number than they expected. And in fact, because of this and because of what Obama folks are hearing on the ground in other states, they're already raising the estimate of delegates that they think they can win tonight. They were really thought that they were looking at a night where they would get 810 to 830 delegates. Now they already think that they might be able to get more than 850 delegates tonight, and that might mean that they win the delegate war tonight. Now, it's one state, and they're probably, you know, looking at too many rumors of exit poll information, but already they feel pretty good about what they're hearing on the ground. The Republican side, this too close to call. The difference between first and second, Georgia does do some apportioning of its delegates. So you can finish second or third and get a few delegates out of the state. But the difference between first and second is going to be at least 30 delegates. We've got the winner of this is going to win at least 46 delegates coming out of here, out of the 69 that are up in Georgia. So it's a big difference between first and second. No difference, by the way, between second and third. Whoever, assuming this stays this tight three-way race, who finishes second, who finishes third, they'll both get about the same amount of delegates.
Sense, looking at these numbers so far out of Georgia, that the Republican conservatives are simply resistant to John McCain.
They're resistant to John McCain, but they're also resistant to Mitt Romney. Let's not remember, Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee are also struggling to put the coalitions together. Right. Huckabee couldn't get economic conservatives. Romney couldn't get these social conservatives. So all of them are having this problem putting these coalitions together.
Boy, it's a restive political party. Anyway, thank you, Chuck Todd. Up next, what do you expect tonight from the Latino vote? It's going to be critical, of course, in states like California, Arizona, and New Mexico. We've known that for weeks. Tonight, we'll find out what happens. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage of Big Super Duper Tuesday.
The first numbers are in. NBC News has projected Barack Obama as the winner in Georgia. The hard numbers are finally coming in. Count them, 3 precincts reporting from both sides in the Democratic and Republican primaries. The Republican number, it's still less than 0, to quote Elvis Costello. And John McCain giving an indication of what we're expecting here, why it's too close to call. A 38-28-27 margin over Huckabee and Romney. That with literally about 700-800 votes total in this primary, at least from the Republican side. The Democratic side, it's Obama 509,
Clinton 235. John Edwards still on the ballot with 41 votes. Again, that is 3 precincts reporting, not 3%, but just 3 precincts, and the very beginning of a very long night on Super Tuesday. And we're back here at MSNBC headquarters. We will be getting some results from some states with big Latino populations. For more on the crucial Latino vote tonight, we're joined from San Francisco by Mayor Maria Teresa Peterson of the group Voto Latino. Thank you for your time tonight, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you so much, Keith. Thanks for having us on.
It's almost now, it's been the story for weeks and weeks, especially about California. It's almost as if the name had been changed from Latino to Crucial Latino. Is the community aware of its importance in the vote in California? Is everybody comfortable with that? Is it an incentive to get people to go out and vote?
I have to say that I've been doing this now for about 3 years, and this has been the easiest time for me to encourage folks to go out to the polls.
And go ahead. Is there an indication of what is there? First off, is there a block? Is that assumption correct? Is there any tendency in terms of voting that can be discerned in that group?
No, I think it's actually very reflective. And if anything, what we're seeing is a generational divide. You see a very large group of individuals over the age of 40 going over for Hillary Clinton, and then you see a large folks who are under 40 going for Barack. Now, the beauty of it is that of the 18 million eligible Latino voters, 50% of them are exactly under 40, and 50% of them are exactly over 40. So it's a divisional divide.
So you're not just crucial in terms of an election, you're the crucial demographic breakdown in terms of age.
Exactly. Just to give you an example, in California, of all the Latino voters in California, that's equal to all the voters in all of Colorado.
Why was there previous disaffection on the part of Latino voters that has suddenly been erased, or has there been consciousness raised, or what is the change? You said it's the easiest experience you've had in 3 years getting people to vote. Can you pinpoint a cause?
Absolutely. I think it's the whole immigration debate. Now, I don't think that Latinos are going to the polls because of immigration, but I think it's more of a catalyst. A lot of folks have seen the immigration debate as a backlash of Latinos basically saying, you know what, they're not American. And in fact, the community is counteracting it and saying, we're very American and we're going to go to the polls and address issues that are a concern of us.
Is it possible, we saw, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I saw it throughout New York at establishments throughout the city of New York today, a heavy turnout by Barack Obama's people in public places, basically shopping for voters one at a time, trying to convince people to go to the polls in New York as late as 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. Last time I would have been able to see that. Is there a means of pursuing the Hispanic vote and the Latino vote in California in that sort of retail fashion?
Well, I know that a lot of what folks were doing is that they were basically, they took advantage of that they had free minutes over the weekend, and I know that there was a lot of phone banking going on, friends to friends, peers to peers, and it's viral. It's been an incredible experience.
Maria Teresa Peterson reporting the easiest time getting out the vote for Voto Latino, the civic organization aimed at nonpartisan representation and getting the vote out for Latino youth, joining us from San Francisco. Our thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Keith.
Up next, Norah O'Donnell looks ahead to the top of the hour, the polls closing in many delegate-rich states, 9 of them in fact. Norah will show us what's at stake in those big 9. You're watching MSNBC's continuing coverage of Super Tuesday. More after this. Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Jersey, Oklahoma, and Tennessee close at the top of the hour. Right now we have Georgia, where NBC News has declared Barack Obama the projected winner in Georgia. The hard numbers that are coming in still represent less than 0%, but it's a 64-30 split between Obama and Clinton. And if you miss some of those inside the number exit polls, in white voters, Clinton winning 54-43, according to our exit poll information, a lot tighter than any previous match like that we've seen so far in the primary season. In the GOP, it is officially considered too close to call among all 3 of them. We're not even saying anybody's scrapping out of that 3-man group. McCain with a 5% lead again, but we're talking about minuscule numbers. 9 precincts reporting thus far out of Georgia. Many more hard numbers, to the point where you won't want to hear a number again by the end of the evening. In the interim, Norah O'Donnell looks now at what we can expect when those polls that we mentioned in some of the eastern states close at 8 o'clock. Norah.
That's right, Keith. Thank you very much. And just like you, I'm eagerly looking forward to the next set of results. And so let's first take a look at which polls close at 8 o'clock. We've got a number of states: Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Jersey, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, all of those closing at 8 o'clock. So first, let's talk about, now how NBC News is handicapping all of these states that are voting today. Let's talk about the Democrats first. And the states that lean toward Clinton, according to our NBC News analysis: New York, New Jersey, Arkansas, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Clinton's campaign really wants to do well in those big states in the Northeast, like New York and New Jersey. Now let's turn to the states that lean toward Obama: Alaska, Idaho, Kansas, Minnesota, North Dakota, Alabama, Illinois, and of course we've called Georgia already. That went for Obama as expected. Now Obama's campaign is making the case that they have some red state appeal, especially in those Republican stronghold states like we just mentioned: Alaska, Idaho, Kansas, and North Dakota, which lean towards him tonight. The Democratic toss-ups, here's what gets interesting. We're going to be watching these states very closely: Arizona, Connecticut, Colorado, Delaware, Missouri, New Mexico, Utah, and California. All right, ready to turn to the Republicans now? Let's talk about John McCain and the states that lean towards him: Arizona, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Connecticut. What about the states leaning towards Mitt Romney? Let's take a look at those. These are caucus states: Minnesota, Montana, North Dakota, Alaska, and Colorado, plus Utah and Massachusetts, of course, where Romney was once governor. The Republican toss-up states, the states we're going to be watching very, very closely, include California, of course, the big one, Alabama, Georgia, Illinois, and Missouri, of course, which is always a bellwether state. Now, Keith, these states that we just showed you, this is based on our NBC News analysis. We will watch, but as you know, especially those toss-up states that we just showed you, watching those very closely, because how those break will decide who wins. Keith?
Nora O'Donnell, thanks. And if anybody's sitting there waiting to do something before the California results come in, you have time to do it right now. Chris.
Well, focusing in right now on the race in New Jersey, I'm joined right now by New Jersey U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, who's also national co-chair of the Clinton campaign. Senator Menendez, not just because you're here, but it's been my conclusion, thinking hard all day, that New Jersey is, in fact, the bellwether state tonight. Do you accept that? The one to watch to decide who wins tonight, between Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama?
Well, it's a great state, and we don't have a history of presidential primaries set aside from our regular primaries, and we're getting record turnouts. I think Hillary will do well there. Of course, this is a national race, and it's not just one state that's going to be the bellwether. It's going to be the results of across the country, and then we move on from Super Tuesday to the Potomac primaries and beyond. And Hillary has always said since New Hampshire, this is a national race. We're going to go to the distance, and we're going to achieve the success of the convention.
Well, explain how this works. If New Jersey goes for Hillary Clinton tonight, you, as a superdelegate, would support her. But if it goes for Barack Obama, would you be inclined to vote with your state or vote with your political commitments?
Well, I made a commitment to Senator Clinton because I believe she has the experience we need for the change we want, turning this economy around, making sure that we bring our men and women back from Iraq, and making sure that every American has health care. So I'm committed to her for all those reasons, and we'll continue to do so.
The state of New Jersey, sir, cannot change your mind then, if they do vote for Barack tonight.
The state of New Jersey, I think, is going to do very well by Hillary Clinton tonight. And certainly, we always listen to our constituents. But at the end of the day, when you make a commitment, you make a commitment. I think New Jerseyans respect that as well.
Is there anything your voters could do to convince you to switch to Barack?
You know,
I'm giving you a hard
Chris,
time because I'm trying. Let me be honest with you,
That's
Senator.
okay.
I am trying to figure out this superdelegate thing. It seems to me that you folks in the established position, elected positions in your government, our government, and in your party, have certain perquisites. You're allowed to make your mind up. But to what extent are you influenced by the voters? That's all I'm asking. You say not at all.
Well, you know, we always have a say with our constituents, but there will be a very strong universe that it will be for Hillary from New Jersey. And there's unaffiliated voters not committed to a party who may have voted in this election on the Democratic side, certainly for Hillary as well as for Barack. So at the end of the day, the question is, I will stand up for what I believe in. I believe that Hillary is, in fact, the person who can lead our country in a new direction, has the strength, the experience. She's been tested. And let me tell you, against John McCain, I want someone who has been tested. And if I look at who voted for the Republicans in 2004 for Bush, it's women who are concerned about security and Latinos who gave 40% of their votes to Bush. Those are two groups that are strongly supporting Hillary today and beyond.
In the tradition of Edmund Burke, Senator Bob Menendez will vote his conscience, not the vagaries of the public opinion polls. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Illinois is the biggest prize up for grabs when polls close there at 8 p.m. tonight. For a look at the race there, I'm joined by Illinois Congressman Bobby Rush, who's an Obama supporter. I love the fact, Congressman, that you beat Barack Obama when he tried to grab your seat, and now you're out there endorsing him.
Well, you know, Obama has really impressed me. He's certainly developed a message that I think is resonating throughout the country, and he's an Illinoisan. He's my neighbor, and so I'm supporting Barack. It was a very difficult decision. You know, ironically, when Obama did run against me, Clinton came to my rescue and was part of my team to help defeat him. But, you know, right now I think that it's important right now that the message that Obama is carrying across this nation is a good message, is a sound message, and therefore I'm supporting Barack Obama for president.
Do you believe he would be the best president, or is this simply a favorite son endorsement?
Well, I think that he has electrified certainly the electorate, young people, other people, particularly African Americans. He's electrified the nation. I think that he brings us a certain message, a message of hope, and a message of a positive future. He makes politics seems like it's something that's of the highest order now, and I kind of like that about him. He's resonating with people who are looking for a way out and looking for a brighter future, and I think that that he's a perfect candidate right now.
How come he didn't electrify anybody when he's running against you, sir?
Well, you know, he ran up against some history, and he ran up against a person who stayed real connected to his community, and and I just think that Obama at that time, it was a miscalculation on his part.
Okay.
But you know, that was 8 years ago, and now we're looking at today and looking at the future.
Well, thank you, sir. The man that beat Barack Obama, U.S. Congressman Bobby Rush of Illinois.
It is a tight three-way race down in Georgia among the Republicans. We've talked about how Barack Obama has been projected as the victor among the Democrats. Republicans too close to call, with 3 of them still in the race. Those are the hard numbers, still less than 0%. Newsweek's Howard Feinman, the MSNBC political analyst, he is in our campaign listening post in Washington, and instead of doing the listening right now, he'll do the talking on how those Republican camps are reacting to the tightness in Georgia. Howard.
Well, that's what everybody's studying, because what it indicates, number one, is that John McCain is no powerhouse in the South, and neither, for that matter, is Mitt Romney, and Mike Huckabee could turn out to be the story of the night in that region of the country. Now, the radio talk show hosts on the conservative side that I talked to just now, including Laura Ingraham, one of the leaders of the anti-McCain band, think that this is all a plot by the McCain forces to divide the opposition and allow McCain to slip through to the nomination. But in talking to one of the top McCain people just a few minutes ago, I think they're a little queasy about this. And in talking to the Huckabee people, they just told me the McCainites, you know, better watch out. Be careful what you wish for, because I think Huckabee could do well. Yes, he'll divide the anti-McCain vote, but it also means that McCain has not and may well not unify the conservative grassroots on his behalf, even if he wins some of these big winner-take-all states. It's an ongoing problem for him. The top Huckabee person I talked to said, we're going to go great guns, and we're in it to win it. They're not going to win it, but they could continue to make life a little difficult for McCain.
So how this is a very strange-looking triangle here among these last three with the Republicans, because if McCain does not unify, the section that would be most likely to break away from the GOP and perhaps go third party would seem to have, at least the one that would have the best possibility of running a third candidate who would have some name recognition and get some traction, would be those who support Huckabee. And yet the Romney people think that Huckabee is just the stalking horse here for McCain. There are three people here and three different stories here.
Yes, and there's a lot of spinning going on. But my sense from talking to all the camps within the last hour is that this may be a little bit more, just a touch more than the McCain strategists those clever people bargained for. Because there is a possibility that Huckabee will become sort of the candidate of the son of the South, and that is a regional split that poses problems for McCain, because no Republican nominee can really win the presidency without a firm lock on the South. And that's what he's looking at now. They may win the Pyrrhic victory of knocking Romney back in a lot of places, except perhaps Massachusetts and so forth, but they still have this other guy to deal with, and that poses a problem heading into this big conservative meeting that's going to take place this weekend in Washington, Keith, the big Conservative Political Action Conference. I'm told McCain is going to come there armed with the audio tape and pictures of when he accompanied Ronald Reagan to that event 30 years ago. There'll be testimonies from Nancy Reagan. They're going to lay it on thick, but it might not be enough.
Crying out loud, I thought for a second there you said he was coming armed. Howard Feynman, who brought up Massachusetts. Thank you, Howard. And
You're
speaking
welcome.
of Massachusetts, another state closing at the top of the hour, exactly 15 minutes from now. MSNBC political analyst Mike Barnicle joins us from Boston with a look at how the races have played out there. Mike, good evening.
Keith, how are you? My heart beats still in that last line of yours.
Well, that's what he said. Then he finished the sentence, and mine started again, too. What kind of, as Chris so aptly pointed out with Governor Patrick talking about the anti-establishment position and suddenly realizing he and Senator Kerry and at least two-thirds of the Kennedy clan constitute the majority that has now endorsed the seeming establishment candidate all of a sudden, Barack Obama in Massachusetts. That's another place that's standing on its head right now, is it not?
Oh, yeah, surely. You know, I was listening to Chris's conversation with Senator Menendez from New Jersey a few moments ago, and it struck me that maybe some of these people in politics are so isolated they really don't understand how much this country is changing right before our eyes and ears this evening. And that might be one of the great stories that is going to be written in a while. The country is changing. The volatility of the electorate, not only today, but for the past 3 or 4 days. In Massachusetts, Hillary Clinton had a 20 to 25 point lead, Keith, a week before Christmas. And now it's no longer neck and neck. I suspect that Obama is slightly ahead. We won't know for a few minutes. The polls will close, and then we'll get a projection, of course. But it gets back to what we do love to talk about on these evenings, and it's interesting, the numbers, the exit poll numbers, and how many percentages of white people are voting for this person and how many Latinos are voting for this person. But the larger picture, I would submit, is much more than the numbers. And it's about this candidate, Barack Obama, win or lose. He is in the process of putting a smile on America's face. I find it stunning. This old cynic, I find it stunning.
And that would be the first time that a smile has been put on your face other than in a motion picture about politics since when?
Or a baseball game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the spring of 1968 comes to mind, you know, when you had so many young people, eager young people, participated in politics for either Eugene McCarthy or Robert Kennedy. I went to 5 or 6 different polling places in and around greater Boston today, and I was struck by the number of young people eagerly and actively involved in this campaign, on both sides, I might add, for Senator Clinton as well as Senator Barack Obama. But they were out there, and they were voting and participating in numbers that I haven't seen in years.
Giving kind of a Robert Redford feel to the thing. Mike Barnicle in Boston. Thank you, Mike.
Keith has been alluding to the starring role.
Yes.
Of Mike Barnicle in the great movie, The Candidate.
Stolen from Redford.
He upstaged him a bit, didn't he? Anyway, let's bring in David Gregory, NBC Chief White House Correspondent. David.
You know, looking ahead here to the top of the hour, Chris and Keith, and some of the big states that we are going to hear about, looking at some of the exit polls and hopefully get some results, or at least a characterization of where the race is. Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Missouri. I've been looking at some of the exit polls on the Republican side out of Missouri, and it's the point that Howard Fine was making about some of the muddle that we're seeing among conservatives. It looks like an advantage for Mitt Romney, a strong showing there. Yet among those who have economic concerns, the state of the economy, slight advantage for John McCain at this point. Also important in Missouri, though, the top priority, does the candidate share my values? Big number there. There's an advantage for Mike Huckabee. So in a bellwether state, we're going to look at Missouri and see a muddle on this Republican side. Democratic side out of Missouri, again, we're going to look at the white vote. How is Barack Obama performing there outside of what some people may consider his core constituency of African Americans? We're seeing strong performance in aspects of the South. We'll look for that there. We'll also look for that in states like Alabama. Guys?
David Gregory, previewing what we're going to see at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock Eastern time, when we have that massive number of closings, including those keys in Massachusetts. Well, they're all keys at this point.
Right. Well, you know, I'm looking at these numbers and I'm thinking, you know, how female the Democratic Party is. It's a stunning difference. There really is a tilt among American women to the Democratic Party, and you see in every one of these exit polls. And you see the opposite in the Republican Party, a more male-oriented party. And yet I think we may see tonight, as we're seeing in all kinds of different parameters here, different changes, that just because women are voting in larger numbers than men in almost all these events, the tilt to Hillary Clinton may not be as dramatic as it was in some of those earlier contests. People are voting with tremendous liberty and freedom, I think, now, and they're voting their own way, and we keep bumping into people who don't match the sociometric overlay. They don't match it. They don't fit the pattern of voting that they're supposed to. So let's go back to Joe Scarborough and the panel for more discussions of the sociometric overlay and everything else we might see here tonight. I don't think everybody's voting their gender, their ethnic group, or whatever, not even always their age. Joe.
No, but they do appear, as David Gregory said, on the Republican side at least, to be voting their ideology. Pat, what are we going to be surprised by tonight?
I think you might be surprised by Romney in Michigan and in California.
Not Michigan.
Excuse me, Missouri and California. I think he's coming up. His surge isn't as great as Obama's, but I think he's coming up there. I'll tell you what I think is you have to make a prediction, Joe. Bill Clinton is going to be blamed for the fact that Barack Obama won Georgia by a much larger landslide than he won South Carolina. He won a far higher percentage of black vote in Georgia and a far higher percent of the white vote in Georgia. I think it'll be attributed to a backlash to the statements that Bill Clinton was making before the South Carolina primary.
Yeah, it looks that way. Rachel, what's your big prediction tonight?
Huckabee lives.
Huckabee lives.
I think Huckabee lives. I think Alabama and Tennessee are real possibilities for Huckabee, not just in terms of hurting Mitt Romney's chances or how he's going to affect either of the candidates. I think that he's got a real chance on his own in those states.
What about you, Gene?
Hillary Clinton emerges from this evening on her own, basically, because having Bill Clinton at her side is not working.
It's really hurting her.
It is hurting her. I think this evening will end up being a repudiation of Bill Clinton.
And I think tonight on the conservative side, we will see a repudiation of John McCain. You know, last week, a lot of people were thinking that McCain was going to be marching to the nomination after Super Tuesday. I'm predicting almost a three-way tie. Huckabee is going to race through the South in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, West Virginia, possibly Oklahoma. McCain will win the Northeast and maybe Arizona, but that's going to be tighter than we expected. And then you've got Romney in Utah, Massachusetts, Delaware, winner take all, possibly Missouri, winner take all. And get this, in California, some exit polls are showing that he didn't do as well in the early votes, the ones that people are already voting, but the Romney people believe they're seeing a huge surge of support for people who went out and voted today. So what does it all mean? A three-way tie.
It means the conservatives are belatedly moving toward Romney. I think you're right. In the South, Huckabee's holding this huge base of delegates.
Conservatives are going to Huckabee in the South and Romney in the South, and they're going to Romney elsewhere. That means John McCain is going to have to scratch and claw all the way to St. Paul. Back to you, Keith.
All right, Joe Scarborough, and talking about your three-way Republican event in Georgia, the hard numbers right now: Mike Huckabee, 3,836 votes; John McCain, 3,833 votes. Huckabee by 3 votes, with 2% in Georgia and Mitt Romney in third. And as we await the next round of poll closings at the top of the hour, as we've mentioned, Romney's Massachusetts, Obama's Illinois, all sorts of other, Connecticut, Jersey, Oklahoma, Tennessee. Let's turn now to Tim Russert, NBC's Washington bureau chief, moderator of Meet the Press. Let's talk about this seeming indication of the revival of Mike Huckabee, no pun intended.
Last week, Keith, we talked about John McCain dangling in front of Mike Huckabee. Now, Mike Huckabee, what he's doing for John McCain is extraordinary. He stopped Romney in West Virginia. And what happened in Georgia tonight? 64% of those voters in Georgia on the Republican side, evangelical Christians. Huckabee getting 43% of them, according to our exit poll. He is one of the most extraordinary blocking backs for John McCain we've seen. But if he puts together this coalition of southern states tonight, Huckabee is in a position to then counter to John McCain saying, hey, I'm more than a blocking back. I am doing the Lord's work for you. And what is in it for me? I'm going to keep on going here, and maybe I'll become the conservative alternative. This brings new vigor to Mike Huckabee, and I think increases his bargaining position for future relations and negotiations with John McCain.
All right, he's got Alabama coming up at 8 o'clock. He's got Tennessee coming up at 8 o'clock. He's got Arkansas coming up at 8:30, and Arkansas will probably look like a big giant star on his forehead, will it not?
No doubt about it. And that continues that alignment. It's something that Mitt Romney is dreading, but Mike Huckabee is going to be in a position to say to John McCain, I have not only stopped Mitt Romney, I have a pot full of delegates from some key states that you need. Oh, and by the way, the radio conservative talk show hosts are giving you a hard time. I'm a former Southern Baptist preacher. I can help you on a lot of fronts, Senator McCain.
Are we back to not having this settled till St. Paul?
Well, we don't know yet, Keith. Chris, we want to see how California comes in. I think California is critical for Mitt Romney. It's very difficult for him to lay a claim tomorrow that he wants this race to go forward if all he has is his biggest state is Massachusetts. If, on the other hand, he's able to win California and keep Arizona close, then he will go forward saying this race is not over.
Democrats, Tim, 8 o'clock of the various ones. Obviously, Obama not doing well in Illinois is a virtual impossibility. What's the key at 8 o'clock for the Dems?
Boy, I want to see New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, Keith. Those were states that Hillary Clinton had sizable leads a few weeks ago. Has Obama closed those leads? Has he passed her in those states? It will tell us a lot about the profile, men, women vote, black, white, Hispanic vote. Look at Connecticut, New Jersey, and Massachusetts.
So based on what Mike Barnacle just told us in Massachusetts, do we now have to do exit polling to find out if a candidate has put a smile on voters' faces?
I always listen to Barnacle, I tell you that.
Tim Russert, Meet the Press, Washington bureau chief. As always, Tim, great thanks.
Thanks.
When we return, as promised, the results from the 9 closers at 8 o'clock. They are, again, Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, as Tim mentioned, so important, Missouri, New Jersey, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, and then half an hour later, Arkansas, which has some sort of history with Senator Clinton, I believe. Those all coming up as Chris Matthews and I continue to lead your coverage of Super Tuesday here on MSNBC. In those states, it's pencils down. It's 8 p.m. on the East Coast. Polls have indeed closed in 9 states. We have several results to project for you with the polls closed through much of the East. Let's start with the Democrats in Illinois. No surprise, in his home state, NBC News projects Senator Barack Obama to win the Illinois Democratic primary. We're not characterizing it otherwise. The victory will have to do for him for now. In Oklahoma, we have a projected winner. The numbers, the polling had indicated Senator Clinton ahead in that state by about 2-1. NBC News has projected Senator Hillary Clinton the winner of the Oklahoma Democratic primary. Thus, so far, it is 2-1 in the votings tonight for the Democrats, with Georgia having already gone to Senator Obama earlier. Again, that's Illinois and Oklahoma split. Obama gets Illinois and Clinton gets Oklahoma. The Republicans, the Illinois vote is in based on our projection in any event. John McCain, the projected winner of the Illinois Republican primary by NBC News. That, again, was not significantly close in the latest surveys, about a 20% lead for McCain in the last polling. In New Jersey, the Democrats will have to wait here. We're still working on trying to figure that one out. McCain, who had, in the last Zogby poll there, pretty much doubled Mitt Romney, is our projected winner in New Jersey as well. Mitt Romney is the winner in his state he formerly served as governor by a sizable margin in the last polling. Mitt Romney is our NBC News projected victor in the Republican primary in Massachusetts. And one more just coming in, the Connecticut projected winner for the Republicans. Again, John McCain. None of these would be considered surprises, and that probably explains why the projections could be made as early as they have been, with the polls closing at 8 o'clock. This is what the Republican map looks like, and it is a split indeed among the states won by Republicans tonight and throughout this primary season, Chris.
Well, it's interesting that John McCain, who made a real effort to poach and embarrass Mitt Romney in Massachusetts, failed to do so, and now he leaves himself open to possibly losing in California later tonight, and if that's the case, a bad strategic move on his part.
Yeah, resources allocated becomes just as important in this chess game that Duper Tuesday, especially with the Republican winner-take-alls, created for them.
He went for the humiliation of his opponent rather than the defeat of his opponent. A bad move. Don't get mad, get even.
And then get mad later
and then get ahead
when you're in charge.
Anyway, joining us right now to analyze the latest wave of results, David Gregory, Chief White House Correspondent for NBC News. David.
Chris, I think as you pointed out, none of this really is a surprise, but just to underline the point about Massachusetts and John McCain. John McCain was campaigning there yesterday, really getting in Mitt Romney's face, trying to close on a message that he's a real conservative. He's been doing that, and he's also making an appeal that he's got a broad coalition behind him. We still wait and see. Mike Huckabee, as we've been talking about, a big story on the Republican side, and we still want to see what happens in Tennessee and in Alabama. You look at these exit polls in those southern states and also in Missouri, which is a bellwether, and we see a strong advantage for Mike Huckabee, not only among evangelical Christians coming out to vote, but among those voters who say that the most important aspect of their vote is whether the candidate shares their values. You see Mike Huckabee doing very well there. It's a continuing storyline here, whether he is helpful to McCain in stopping Romney or whether he's got his own base that is emerging tonight. Again, also waiting for results in these key states, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Jersey on the Democratic side, where Hillary Clinton has had some very big leads recently.
Well, it's interesting, David, looking at the women voting. Of course, in the Democratic Party, as we pointed out, women do dominate over men in terms of just basic numbers. But it's interesting, if you look at the states, some of the key states tonight, which have already closed, their voting has closed, and we can talk about it. You see in Connecticut, although 61% of the vote were women, that the split was only 53 Hillary, 44 Barack. If you look at Missouri, it's only, well, I can do Missouri, 50-44. In New Jersey, 52-46. So even though women are voting in heavier numbers in the Democratic caucuses and primaries than men, they're splitting their vote roughly even in some of these states. And in those states, Barack looks like he may do well.
Well, right. And obviously the Obama campaign tonight touting those results in Georgia, where they've got the highest percentage of the female vote that they've gotten so far. This was a state, obviously, where he had a large turnout among the young and among African Americans. Strong showing for him among women in that state.
Okay, thank you very much. David Gregory, White House correspondent for NBC News.
After the 8 o'clock closings, let's make our tour of the camps. Kevin Cork is at Clinton campaign headquarters here in New York. Kevin.
Keith, good evening to you. I just talked to a Clinton campaign staffer a little while ago, and I asked her point blank, were you disappointed or surprised at all by the numbers out of Georgia, the numbers that seem to suggest that Barack Obama did much better among white male voters? And she said flatly, no. She said the South is more traditional. I think we'll be just fine. Those were her words. And, of course, there is reason for optimism here. Tonight, we expect the senator to not only do well here in the Northeast, but also continue to pull away from Barack Obama as they dot the South and the West. As you pointed out, she did fairly well in Oklahoma, and they're very encouraged by that sign this evening, Keith.
Kevin Cork in New York at Clinton campaign headquarters. Now let's look at the other side of the Democratic stick, out to Obama headquarters in Chicago. Our David Schuster is standing by there. David, good evening.
Keith, good evening to you. They are so focused here on the delegate count tonight that even though they were widely expected, of course, to win in Illinois, there's still great concern, great interest right now in the Obama campaign about how they did in 3 congressional districts near Chicago, where the total number of delegates, 8 delegates each. And Keith, what they were looking for is they were looking for not just a 5-3 split in the delegates, but that if Obama could get above 70%, it would become 6-2. In other words, just the pickup of 3 delegates in the Chicagoland area beyond what they were already anticipating they would get. It's that important to them. But again, Illinois, no surprise. The crowd, of course, starting to fill up here. Mostly younger people at the Obama headquarters. A sense of excitement tonight, but again, no surprise in Illinois. Now they're looking, of course, forward to look to some of these battleground states like Missouri to see, can they pull the upset over Hillary Clinton that would really make for a big evening for them. Keith?
David, to look backwards briefly, did they go along with Chuck Todd's analysis of Georgia with the large supply of delegates going their way, getting over that hump to the 3-to-1 ratio?
Yeah, Keith, they got what they wanted in Georgia. This was the best case scenario for them in Georgia. They got what they wanted. They were surprised by some of the results as well, particularly the white voters. But they sense that Georgia's just the tip of the iceberg, Keith, and now they're raising expectations that maybe what happened in Georgia, if they got what they wanted in Georgia, maybe they did pick off those extra delegates by running up the score in Chicago. Maybe they can steal some delegates in New Jersey and Missouri. They're feeling very optimistic at this point, Keith.
David Schuster in Chicago with the Obama folk. Thanks, Chris.
Now let's look at the Republicans. And MSNBC's Tucker Carlson is following developments for the McCain campaign out in Phoenix. Tucker, are they upset that they failed to poach those votes up in Massachusetts?
I think that was expected. I flew out this morning from New York with the McCain people, and while I think they expect to win the nomination ultimately, and they want to, what they really want to do is beat Mitt Romney. A furor broke out today over West Virginia, as you know, which Mike Huckabee won. The Romney campaign has accused the McCain campaign of coordinating with the Huckabee people in order to have Huckabee win. John McCain denied that today publicly. There was some skepticism from the press corps about whether that's true, but there you have it. I don't think they expect to win California, or at least they're not claiming they're planning on winning it. There's been some softening in McCain numbers, or what appears to be some kind of minor surge by Mitt Romney, but they're dampening down expectations of what's going to happen in this state. We stopped there for about an hour today. There were probably almost half as many dignitaries on the stage as there were spectators in the crowd. John McCain was introduced by the governor of the state, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then flanked by senators and Charlie Crist, the governor of Florida. He clearly is the establishment candidate now, though, and on the Republican side, that matters.
Okay, Tucker Carlson, thank you. For the view from the Romney campaign, we turned out NBC's John Yang in Boston. Well, he held his home state.
Not much of a big victory there. Surprise there, Chris. If he had not, it would have been a bigger story. The Romney officials, rather, based on the expectations that they've sort of outlined for us, are having sort of a mixed night so far. The three-way tie in Georgia was good news and bad news. They hope to be competitive in Georgia, but they hope to be competitive one-on-one with McCain. The fact that they're fighting with Huckabee for the votes, that there is a conservative vote against McCain, but then the Huckabee and Romney are splitting that vote, has got to be frustrating for them. The other figures, the numbers, Illinois, they had hoped to be competitive, but the fact that NBC is able to call that race so early suggests it isn't. And of course, they're looking ahead to the end of the night. California, they say, will tell the results in California, particularly the delegate count out of California, will really say a lot about how this campaign can move forward in the days ahead. Chris?
Okay, thank you very much, John Yang. Let's turn now to Nora O'Donnell to take us further inside tonight's races and how Mike Huckabee is really helping John McCain.
Chris, John Yang just mentioned about this. You were talking about Mike Huckabee may not in the end win many states tonight, but that does not mean that he isn't going to be a factor. So let's take a look at what we're calling the Huckabee effect. The Romney campaign is really worried about this, and we got an early sense of this today when there was this bitter back and forth, this essentially getting in each other's face between Romney and Huckabee. The Romney campaign accused Huckabee of dirty tricks and backroom bargains to win the West Virginia caucus. Huckabee responded by calling Romney a whiner. That's right. I mean, ouch. The bitterness is in part because Huckabee is very popular among social conservatives and Southerners, and he could take a big chunk of that vote away from Mitt Romney. Let's look at the 5 states where it matters, where Huckabee could hurt Romney and help John McCain: Alabama, Georgia, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. Now, in these 5 states, Huckabee could cost Romney as many as 168 delegates. That's according to our political director, Chuck Todd. That's why Huckabee matters. That's why Romney's campaign, senior advisors were telling me today, they believe Huckabee is going to be a spoiler in this race. Chris?
Okay, thank you, Nora. Now let's more from our exit polls on the Latino vote, and for that we go to Lester Holt.
All right, Chris, thanks very much. There's been a great deal of focus on the Hispanic vote, especially in California, where a quarter of the Democratic primary voters are expected to be Latino. Now, we're a ways off from the polls closing in California and some of the other heavily Hispanic electorates out west. However, we can tell you nationally what we're learning about Latino Democratic voters. Among all who cast ballots in the Democratic primary so far today, 15% are Hispanic or Latino. That's very close to the percentage of African Americans who are voting. And here is the breakdown the campaigns will be watching very closely. So far, Hispanics are backing Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama by a margin of 61% to 38%. Clinton has been counting on support from Latino voters to counter Obama's strong support among African Americans. Now, breaking it down even further, Clinton runs a bit stronger among Hispanic women than she does among Hispanic men. Obama still does well among younger voters, but even there, specifically among those under 30, Clinton has an edge. As for issues of concern among Hispanics, it's the same as for most everyone else. The economy, it was called a top issue by 54% of the Hispanic Democratic voters. That's twice as many as those who call the top issue health care or the war in Iraq. While most Hispanic voters in these Democratic primaries feel the economy is doing poorly, a majority, 53%, say personally they're doing okay. They're holding steady. However, more than a quarter of these voters actually say they're getting ahead. Finally, Hispanics play an important role in Republican Party politics in some states, such as Florida and Texas. But in today's mega primary contest, Hispanic voters are not a major factor in any GOP race, making up just 6% of all Republican primary voters across the country. And Keith and Chris, coming up, we just received some numbers looking at the evangelical vote. It's really key as we look how it breaks down among the Republican candidates. I'll be back in a while and share those with you.
Thank you, Lester.
All right, now some of the states that closed at 8 o'clock that we can't make projections. This is always perhaps as instructive as the ones in which we actually have some of the hard numbers. I'm going to see them as you see them. So if you don't see them, that means I haven't seen them, correct? It's too close to call in New Jersey. That's not a surprise. We have 0% of the vote in. Hillary Clinton with a paper lead. She'll take it if it holds up like that, even if there's not another vote counted. The last polling we had on this varied wildly. As late as early this week, it was about 5% Clinton. Also among the Democrats, too close to call, the state of Connecticut. Another critical one, and boy, that is too close to call. A 30-vote margin separating the two with 1% in. They closed at 8 o'clock. And also among the Democrats, too close to call, the Tennessee Democratic primary, a 46-44 split. A 46-44 split early on. It's too early to call in Tennessee, where Clinton was up by 20-some-odd points. Wow. Also among the Democrats, Alabama is too close to call, or rather too early to call. I'll correct myself on that and underscore it. Too early to call in Alabama with a considerable lead in the early voting, the less than 0%. That's not to be confused with what happened in Tennessee. So those are the Democrats. The Republicans, in which we cannot yet make calls. Too close in Missouri. There are some votes in. It will get a little larger than that. That's going to be a litmus test, certainly for the Midwest or West, depending on whether you live in Missouri or Missouri. Oklahoma, too close to call as well between Huckabee and McCain there. A difference of 190 votes. Again, the actual vote count's just beginning to trickle in, considering they all closed 15 minutes ago. One more, Tennessee, too close to call, too early to call in Tennessee. McCain over Romney, and also one more in now from the 8 o'clock closing that is too early to call, the Alabama race, which is expected, however, to be, as you see, between Huckabee and McCain. So there was one headline in that group, as I think I'm expecting we're finished. Tennessee Tennessee Democrats are too early to call? Too early to call.
This is an amazing night, Keith. This is very interesting.
We don't have to elaborate on that. All right, coming up, we're going to get the view from the Republican side of this equation as we continue to track the results as they come in from across the country, or in Tennessee's case, do not come in from across the country. And we want to welcome our viewers for the first time joining us across Asia on Channel News Asia. We're coming to you live from our MSNBC global headquarters in New York City. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage of Duper Tuesday. We now have a call from Tennessee. All right, a little bit of that heart-stopping effect has been saved. Hillary Clinton is the projected winner from Tennessee. Not to try to egg any of the projections or predictions here, but there it is. All right, Tennessee in the Clinton column, and now we will take our break and come back with more after this.
We just saw that Senator Clinton just picked up Tennessee, a projected win for her in this state. One of the first really surprising results we've gotten so far. So far tonight on the Democratic side, it's as predicted for a while now. But let's welcome in MSNBC's coverage. We're going to go right now to Senator Mel Martinez of Florida, who endorsed John McCain. It's kind of hard to see through this the glass darkly tonight, Senator, of what's happening tonight on the Republican side.
Well, a little early to tell, Chris, but it's amazing that it's only been a week since the Florida primary, quite frankly. It seems like that was ages ago, and that's how fast this year and how fluid it is. I still think it's going to be a big night for John McCain. He clearly is going to win in the Northeast. He's going to have take some of the South, and the big prize in California. I guess we'll have to stay up late to know about that one. But I think it's going to be a very good night for John. I think it's going to be a night where he can pretty well consolidate the delegate count, which is really at the end of the day what this is all about.
What good is it for your party if your candidate wins in all the states he can't win in November?
Well, that is why it's important that John McCain be our nominee, because I think John
but
McCain
I mean, these
can
states
win
are going to be very hard for a Republican to carry. Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, these are Democratic states historically. What good is it to pick someone who can't win, who can win there in the primaries but can't win the general?
Well, you're going to have in John McCain a person who can consolidate his support in the Midwest, in the far West, as well as in the South. And there are obviously states that the Republicans don't do well in general elections. I mean, New York has been one of those. But I think John McCain is a kind of candidate that can appeal to independents, that can appeal across party lines, and who, frankly, I believe is the one the Democrats fear the most.
In Florida, you had a special advantage. Yourself and Governor Chris, both popular in that state, endorsed John McCain. He doesn't seem to have that advantage going for him in Georgia.
Well, you know, I was really pleased that Senators Chambliss and Isaacson both endorsed McCain. And I think at the end of the day, you know, every state is different. I was surprised to see what it seems to be a very different outcomes between Georgia and Alabama, who you would think would be somewhat similar in demographics. So it's just a very difficult, and it's a little too early to tell, but it's a very difficult year to make many predictions.
Do you think Mike Huckabee should be on the ticket with John McCain?
You know, I've said all along, I thought, you know, Governor Huckabee would make an excellent vice presidential choice. He's been terrific throughout the campaign. He's done a great job, but that is the candidate's decision to make, and I'm not going to make any predictions on that one either.
Well, I'm trying to figure out this party because it seems to me that no one's really caught on. McCain has won on points. Mitt Romney's having a very hard time selling himself to evangelicals, maybe because of his LDS Mormon religion. I'm not sure. Huckabee has a hard time dying. But it's a strange situation here. Huckabee is staying in long enough to destroy any hopes for Romney without necessarily making John McCain look strong in the South.
Well, John McCain is Lazarus, don't you remember? The great, you know, the great survivor or recovery, whatever you want to call it. And I think he is beginning to consolidate support. There's obviously some people that are still grumpy about John McCain, but at the end of the day, I think once he becomes a presumptive nominee, our party will rally around him and will come together. I think it's time we begin to do that. I really hope that tonight will be decisive enough where we can begin to consolidate behind one candidate.
Well, the trouble with the Lazarus theory, I know we're both Christians, Senator, but the trouble with the Lazarus thing is tonight that would make Mike Huckabee Jesus.
No, I don't know.
That wouldn't be too appropriate for us in this business of politics. I mean, Huckabee seems to be saving John McCain's delegates tonight. He's taking them all away from the other cultural conservative, if you will.
Well, there's a three-way primary going on, and that's the way it breaks out. I mean, you know, last week, Giuliani was taking votes from McCain in Florida. So, you know, you can't pick and choose who your opponents are going to be. And I think John McCain is continuing to show tonight, and I think he will before the night's out, that he is the guy, that he is going to be our presumptive nominee before very long here.
Okay, McCain-Huckabee on the road tonight. Thank you very much, Senator Mel Martinez of Florida. Up next, analysis of the Super Bowl of politics from NBC's Tom Brokaw. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday.
We rejoin you with MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday. We're moments away from polls closing in Arkansas at the bottom of the hour. And as we wait, we're joined once again by NBC's Tom Brokaw. Tom, we used the analogy going into this that this was Super Tuesday at the Super Bowl of politics. The analogy probably is not apt. What is it, closer to the first night of the college basketball playoffs?
It's not parallel because it is Super Tuesday. It is not the Super Bowl. It seems unlikely that on the Democratic side that either Senator Clinton or Senator Obama will be able to play the part of Eli Manning and in the closing 2 minutes of tonight drive the field and throw a winning touchdown pass after escaping a couple of sacks or near sacks. I think the very likely result of tonight is that it will be scrambled. One will have an advantage over the other in delegates, but the larger score probably will be determined by momentum. Will it continue for Senator Obama, or does Senator Clinton check him tonight? Now, in the exit poll, Keith, which I've been going through here, there are some pretty encouraging signs for Senator Obama based on what we have been seeing so far, interviewing voters as they left the polls. He wins every age group in our exit poll up to the age of 50. From 17 to 50, he wins every age group, and then Senator Clinton wins those age groups 50 and above. When people are asked what matters most to them about the candidates, they say that change matters by a factor of almost 2 to 1 over experience. So those are two very strong signs for Senator Obama to build on tonight if he continues to need to do that.
What is the value of an anecdote like this? I know we look for numbers and big trends and such, but just take us inside Johnson County, Kansas, the Republican stronghold, as the note here suggests. Precincts packed, lines out the doors, wrapped around buildings. There's only a Democratic primary there tonight.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I've been traveling the country a lot in the last year for a variety of reasons, and everywhere I go, people are tuned in to this election. They ask very sophisticated questions. Moreover, in a wide variety of audiences, I find very few people who are wedded to kind of past ideological positions. It doesn't mean that they've given up their core principles, but they're willing to look across the line at other candidates and other points of view more than at any time I can remember in my long political reporting career. This election has the same dynamics, if you will, the same drama as 1968, but the country is scrambled in a way, but all the nerve endings are exposed. People want to participate this time, and we're going to see that as we have been, not just tonight, but on all these primaries and caucuses up to this point, Keith, and that's a very heartening sign.
2,000 at Prairie Village, Kansas. They were prepared for 500. Tom Brokaw, very many great thanks. We'll talk to you again.
Okay,
wow.
Keith. Chris?
The polls have closed in Arkansas now. It stayed very close to the hearts of candidates Clinton and Huckabee. And Hillary Clinton is the projected winner on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, it's former Governor Mike Huckabee. That's Hillary Clinton winning in her home state of Arkansas, where she was First Lady for so many years, and Mike Huckabee, again, the projected winner in the state where he was governor for several terms. We'll be right back with more coverage from Keith and I on Super Tuesday.
Very early on the night of Super Tuesday, here's the Democratic map so far. This is the whole of the primary. Georgia for Obama tonight. Illinois, obviously, for Obama tonight. Clinton in Oklahoma, Clinton in Tennessee. The others too close or too early to call, those that closed at 8 o'clock Eastern Time 34 minutes ago. The Republicans, as you see, McCain in Connecticut, McCain in Illinois, Romney in Massachusetts, McCain in Jersey, and the others too close or too early to call, and Huckabee in West Virginia, the others from earlier on in the primary process. Let's now go back to We have a Republican call in Delaware. Let's see that board. The Delaware Republican call is Senator John McCain is the projected winner by NBC News in Delaware for the Republican primary. So we can add on to that map a little bit, flesh that one out. That had been too early to call, and now it got a little bit later. The actual vote, 46-32, looking fairly comfortably at this stage, with 7% reporting in from the state of the DuPonts, and that matches up fairly well to the last bit of polling there at the corner of January and February, which was McCain by 6 and an undecided and margin of error total of 14%. So Delaware to John McCain, the latest NBC News projection, moved that out of too early to call into the McCain category for what continues to be a strong night for the senator from Arizona. And now back to Lester Holt with more from our exit polling on how conservatives and independents voted today. Lester joining us again from what looks like the set from the movie Tron. Lester, good evening.
That's right. We have to return it at the end of the night, in fact, Keith. But let's talk about evangelical voters specifically. They've been a bedrock group for the GOP, but the problem so far for this party in this election is that evangelicals have yet to unite around any one candidate. In other words, they haven't fallen in love. About 3 in 10 Republicans who have voted thus far today are white evangelical Protestants. That's how they identify themselves. Now, keep in mind that this is our coast-to-coast snapshot, so the percentage of evangelicals is likely to be significantly larger in some states, especially in the South. Tonight, just as we've been seeing in some of the early primaries, the 3 major candidates are splitting the evangelical vote. Mike Huckabee with just a tiny edge at 33%, while Mitt Romney got 31% and John McCain 30%. What evangelicals told us is they want a candidate who shares their values. 53% said that was the most important quality. That's somewhat higher than among other Republicans. And for those shared value voters, things are breaking slightly for Mike Huckabee. He got 33% of their vote. Mitt Romney and John McCain each getting 30%. So what's the bottom line here? As these 3 men continue to fight to be the conservative standard bearer, they are failing so far in winning over this group that has been so important in past elections. Keith and Chris?
Lester, great, thanks.
And let's go right down to Joe Scarborough and the panel. Joe.
Hey, thanks so much. Pat Buchanan, that's fascinating. 33% of evangelicals for Huckabee, 31% for Romney. Remember back when we heard that evangelicals were going to be too bigoted to ever vote for a Mormon? We said that was a lie. It's a lie. They're voting for him. John McCain getting 30% of the evangelical vote. My guess is those are the people concerned with Islamic radicalism. So no clean kills from the evangelical
side. It seems
side.
to me that McCain is doing as well as expected. I think he's winning everything he's supposed to win. Huckabee is sort of the story in the South. His strength has been pretty good. Romney is mostly anticipation. I think he's got to do something in Missouri or something in California, or it's going to be a pretty tough night for him.
Well, we all expected. It's 8:38 right now on the East Coast, the only polls that have closed, Eastern polls. We didn't expect Romney to win anything in the Northeast. But one thing we can say, Rachel, right now, tonight looks like a better than expected night for Mike Huckabee. If this guy's playing for vice president, this is one big chip he can throw in the Senate. Well, he's a preacher, he doesn't gamble. But this is he can close his Bible and thank Jesus, because tonight's strengthening his hand.
Well, a lot has been made on kind of the issues desk about talk radio hating John McCain, right? About talk radio and the conservative movement really hating John McCain. What if it is? What if the real factor here that drives results tonight and for the nomination is not so much the hatred of the right wing and the conservative movement for John McCain, but rather the hatred of the other candidates for Mitt Romney?
Well, that's what's
so much
doing
so
it.
that they'll work in cahoots to defeat him.
Well, and that's exactly what we've been doing. And we've seen, Gene, that's exactly what happened up in Delaware, where Mitt Romney won. But basically, McCain and Ron Paul said, let's beat the rich guy.
This is the dynamic of this Republican race
against
right
the
now.
field.
It is Romney. I mean,
It's
they're
one
ganging up
guy
on him.
against everybody.
They are ganging up on him. You know, we hear frustration from the Romney camp, and rightly so. I would be frustrated too if I was getting pounded on by both sides. Huckabee seems to be playing for a spot on the ticket, and maybe he'll get it.
But Mike Huckabee seems like he's saying, yeah, I'd love to be vice president, or you could just allow me to rub this in Mitt Romney's face, and if I could do it personally, that'd be satisfying too. There's a sense of hatred for McCain under
personal exchanges, whiner, you know,
yes,
that sort of thing.
But let's say this, though, about Mike Huckabee tonight. Mike Huckabee tonight is going to win as many states, probably, as Mitt Romney. But Pat Buchanan, after tonight, there's only one other state in the South, Mississippi, down the road, that Mike Huckabee's going to win. So it seems like if he's going to make the deal with McCain, or I would suggest the Romney people call and one-up him, tonight's when he's going to have his strongest hand.
But he may not win states, but he's still taking away votes. He's taking away evangelical votes, and he's clearly taking away some conservative votes.
And he's taking them from Romney.
He's taking them from Romney, but you got to ask yourself, if McCain's getting 30% of evangelicals, if Huckabee drops out, does that automatically mean they all go to Romney? I'm not sure. There seems to be resistance in the South to Romney emerging as the conservative candidate.
There is no doubt about it, Rachel, that there are enough conservatives who aren't listening to Rush and aren't listening to Hannity and aren't listening to Laura Ingraham, who are going with John McCain, and they're doing it because they're more afraid of Islamic radicals than they are a liberal on the Supreme Court.
Even if we decide that conservative anger is the thing that's driving this, there's no obvious place for them to go. Because, yeah, they can be mad at McCain because of all the reasons that Rush and Laura Ingraham tell him to. They can be mad at Huckabee because he's a populist, and Rush and Laura Ingraham and all the rest of them tell him to hate Huckabee as well. But when they start looking at Romney, they've all seen those tapes from him in 1994 running to the left of Ted Kennedy. They've all seen him flip-flop his positions on so many issues that are of concern to social conservatives. There's no obvious great choice for the
social conservatives, if 2 out of 3 are voting against John McCain, then assuming McCain gets the nomination, how strong is he coming out of that process?
And Pat, let's talk about this, because you brought up a great point this morning. Everybody says, oh, John McCain can get independents. Well, you know what? That only works when you hold your base down first, and then you reach and get the independents and bring them over to you. The problem is McCain's been going this way for a long time, and the base is behind him, and they ain't following.
Exactly.
How do you win in the fall without your base?
He's a very weak front runner. I mean, in the red states, deep south, Huckabee's taking them all from him. Romney's getting a third of the vote down there.
He's winning all the blue states. John McCain is winning every state that he will be routed in this fall. What good does that do to him for the fall?
Look, I'll tell you what it does. It does make Huckabee attractive. But then if you put Huckabee on the ticket, you go north and you debate evolution, Joe.
I'll guarantee you, Mike Huckabee right now, sitting with his popcorn popper. He's got the squirrels. He's putting them in and frying them up.
Saddling up the dinosaur.
It may be the night to deal. It may be the night to deal.
This is the night to deal. And, of course, we on Morning Joe created Mike Huckabee. There's a fight between who did. But, Keith, Mike Huckabee said himself, we did. We will take credit tonight as this power broker now moves forward. I think this is his night to deal. Mike Huckabee looking good tonight.
The squirrel pizza arrives at what point?
Yeah, well,
I have a bookend for you before we go to Chuck Todd, Joe. A Hillary Clinton press release that starts with, after the Arkansas call, we're very excited that Hillary Clinton has added a third red state in her victory column. So there's your parallel to what you're talking about with John McCain.
Yeah, good luck in the fall getting Arkansas on your side, Hillary.
All right, let's turn to Chuck Todd, political director for NBC News. More on the delegate count so far as it's changed throughout the evening. Chuck.
Well, Keith, and I apologize for this because obviously we have NBC is going to have an official number, and only as we know delegates are coming in, we're doing those numbers. And that number is always going to be a little bit slower than the estimates that both the campaigns are making and that we're making in the political unit. But in talking to both of the campaigns, we have a pretty good idea for all the states that have closed what the splits are going to be. Let me start in Arkansas, where the Clinton campaign is very happy. They did a little bit better than they thought, got a couple more delegates than they think. They think they're going to get a 23-12 split. That's almost 2-to-1. They basically overperformed. They thought Obama underperformed, particularly in, I think, the 4th Congressional District is a place that they thought that he would do well. So they think they're going to have that kind of split there. Then if you move to Georgia, 60-27. This is something the Obama people are ecstatic about. Of those 87, they think they're going to have 60-61 delegates out of there. It's about 10 more than they estimated, though the Clinton folks, they always had it about this, or so they say, as things are moving on. In Illinois, the Obama people believe they're going to get well over 100 delegates out of here. So this is going to be fun to compare. We're a couple minutes away from when New York polls close. But out of these 150-plus delegates, looks like he's going to get at least 111 out of there. Maybe they get a couple more, but that's what both campaigns seem to agree on. Now I want to highlight Massachusetts. We're obviously nowhere near calling Massachusetts, but we have an idea of where the vote's coming in. And this is one where both campaigns think it's very possible that the candidate that wins the popular vote could actually lose the delegate split, particularly on the Clinton side. The Clinton folks believe they overperformed in the western part of the state and that they will do a little bit better there in some delegate splits, which could, and if Obama ends up winning the popular vote, he may be running up the score and play in and around Boston, and therefore not get any more extra delegates in those areas. So we could see Massachusetts, one of those states to watch tonight, where the person who wins the primary might not get the delegate split. And it's going to be pretty even. There's 93 delegates. It's probably going to be 48-45 in one direction or the other. So as you're doing your math at home, you can do that. By the way, Tennessee might end up being, obviously it was a big enough win for Clinton that we were able to call it pretty early, but the delegate split, she's only going to get maybe 8 more delegates out of Tennessee than Obama. It really shows you the way this proportional system works. She may get about a 38-30 advantage in delegates of the 68 delegates, and yet she may win it by 10 points. So percentage-wise, she's going to have a greater victory on the popular vote than she is on the delegate vote. And finally, Oklahoma, another state, she's running up the score, and yet she may only net 8 delegates out of there because of the way those split works. One estimate that we were able to come up is 23-15 out of those delegates. That's only a net 8, yet she's going to win possibly by a big, big number in Oklahoma.
That just shows you how things change, Chuck. You mentioned Georgia. If it's a 60-27 delegate split for Obama, in October of last year, polling in October of last year in Georgia, Senator Clinton 40%, Senator Obama 27%. That's how things can change, even in supposed lock areas. Chuck Todd, thanks greatly. Up next, to look at the poll closings coming at the top of the hour. The big prize among them, New York State. Our first big indication of how the Southwest will vote. New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson will join us. This is MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday. Coming up 9 minutes hence at the top of the hour, polls closing in New York State, as well as southwestern states, Arizona, that might be John McCain territory, and New Mexico. For more on the race in the Southwest, pleasure to be joined by New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, former presidential candidate, of course, on the Democratic side. Governor, thanks for your time tonight.
Nice to be with you, Keith.
Good news or bad news that there were long lines reported throughout the state tonight, and in some places Democratic caucuses running out of ballots. The good with the bad there in your estimation?
Well, that's good news. It's good news for the Democratic Party. There's a huge vote, protest vote against Republican policies, and it's a record turnout, even though we've had a storm in the northern part of the state where a lot of Hispanic voters live. The turnout is huge. It's a record turnout in New Mexico. I'm hearing the same in Arizona and Colorado, Utah, California. And this is the primary that February 5th is the day where the Hispanic vote comes out in droves. And I believe it's going to be decisive, not just today, but in the general election.
In Arizona, it's 17% of the vote that's Latino. In your state, 38%. Do you have an explanation for why that group seems to be backing Senator Clinton in even bigger numbers than Caucasian voters are?
Because the Clintons have had a long history with Hispanic voters, a very positive history. And I'm detecting, though, that Senator Obama is picking up a lot of support among younger Hispanics, new generational Hispanics, but older, middle-class Hispanics that know the Clintons generally are sticking with them, but it's still too early to tell. But there is an Obama surge among Hispanic voters, particularly those under 45 that I'm detecting. But the turnout was huge. Right in my precinct today, Keith, when I was voting, a voter literally turned around to see me right before he voted and said, "I haven't made up my mind. I haven't made up my mind. I'm really going to make up my mind. I said, well, you better do it because you got about 2 seconds.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second because we can call, we're going to call Alabama on the Republican side. Not a big surprise, but it is Mike Huckabee's. Mike Huckabee is the projected winner in Alabama in the Republican primary. That one of the 8 o'clock closes that had been considered too early or too close to call. It is now going to be, despite the fact that 10% of the real vote is in and suggesting Huckabee trailing, the projections, the exit polls, and the key precinct numbers suggest that when it's over, that will be Mike Huckabee's victory in Alabama. And now back to New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. You suggested something that we've heard throughout from Democrats this evening, from all the exit polling. When we come down to demographic breakdowns throughout the nation, do we have to throw out the old traditional models of African-American voters, Latino voters? If it's anything, is it not even gender anymore? Is it now age?
I think it's right now totally up for grabs. Nobody's making up their mind on race, gender, even age, Keith. I think you're seeing the dissolution of those ethnic blocs voting for certain candidates. I think voters want accomplishment, they want change, they want experience, but there's surely among Democratic voters, I'm detecting, a huge protest vote against Republican policies. Turnouts are huge. In New Mexico, it's going to be a record. I think you're going to see the same in California. There's a real thirst for change, and that's going to favor us in November.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill Richardson out in New Mexico. Sorry, didn't get to ask you any good questions tonight. Anyway, NBC's Tim Russett is with us right now. Tim, I am stunned at the educational level of the typical voter in the Democratic side. You and I grew up in a party looking at the Democratic Party as largely a working class base, but almost in every one of the eastern states now, 3 out of 5 voters who voted in the primaries today are full college graduates. Is that good news for Barack Obama? How do we read that development?
Well, he's been drawing from that universe, but in a national election, in a general election, the Democrats have to do better than that. They have to get some of those Reagan Democrats back into the fold. Right. And I think that's what Hillary Clinton has been trying to do with her campaign. The most striking thing to me right now, Chris, as we approach 9 p.m. on the East Coast, is Connecticut and New Jersey and Massachusetts. All those polls have been closed, and yet we have not called a winner, which means that no matter who wins, it's going to be a close race, which means under Democratic Party rules, the delegates are going to be split very evenly, which plays into what Chuck Todd was explaining earlier, this delegate by delegate count. And so what was supposed to be a definitive night, Super Tuesday, we're going to know who's going to be the Democratic nominee. I don't think so. It looks like it's going to be tighter than ever, and the race goes on. And we have to start looking at which primaries are now going to be in successive weeks leading up to March 4 with Texas and Ohio.
Well, let's look at trend, not just a snapshot, Tim. If you look over the last couple of months, clearly, if you had polled in all these Super Tuesday states, almost all of them, except for Illinois perhaps, or Georgia, Hillary Clinton would have been well ahead. Senator Clinton would have been owning most of these primaries tonight. The fact that it's a close call, perhaps in the delegates as well as in the state totals, does that tell you there's still a trend gradually emerging towards Senator Obama or not?
They will say that the Obama people, they've made up 20 and 30 points in each of these states. The Clinton people, however, if they win, will say a win's a win, and we get a few more delegates, and that's what the game is all about.
Tim, excuse me, here comes a big declaration. Massachusetts, according to NBC News, has been won tonight. The projected winner in the Bay State, Hillary Clinton. That was one that she should have won. That was a favorite for her, wasn't it, Tim?
Considerably ahead, but when you have the governor, Deval Patrick, and the 2 senators, Ted Kennedy and John Kerry, the Obama people were hopeful they could make a tight race of it. They obviously have. I'd be interested to see that delegate count, but look for Hillary Clinton to take a lot of boasting rights by saying she won Massachusetts over Ted Kennedy.
Tim Russert, thanks. That's Massachusetts for Hillary Clinton. In just a few moments, the polls will be closed in 3 more key primaries, including another one of the big ones, New York. Also the caucus states. More results at 9 o'clock Eastern right after this break. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and polls have closed in 6 states. You are looking at some of the latest projections. Massachusetts, as we described it just before the hour, Hillary Clinton with an expected victory over Barack Obama. That's the projection by NBC News. The New York primary, which closed 20 seconds ago, has now been projected for Hillary Clinton in New York among the Democrats. The last polling there had indicated that Hillary Clinton was winning by the 10 to 20% range, depending on which poll you consulted, more towards the 20% range. And our projection is that Illinois, as you know already, Obama is going to take his home state. Those are the early hard numbers of 14% lead there. Among the Democrats in Georgia, this one went quite early and will apparently, according to Chuck Todd, project to a delegate count of 60 for Obama and 27 for Clinton. So that's a landslide coming in Georgia. The projection's already been made for Obama. In Tennessee, Hillary Clinton projected to win that one with 8% of the hard vote in, about doubling, a little less than that, Barack Obama. Oklahoma has been projected as well for the Democrats, for Hillary Clinton. Not close there as of the early 1/5 poll in the actual vote count. And in New Jersey, a critical state that got into play recently, too close to call, despite that early big difference, 10%, too close to call rather than too early to call. Also still on the board, not yet called, Missouri Democrats, too close to call with 4% of the actual vote in and no clear trend apparent. And in Connecticut, the New York metropolitan area providing surprises and too close to call events. Tonight, a quarter of the vote is in, and it's 4,000 difference between them and too close to call based on our NBC News projection. There is the Democratic map tonight. It includes also all those states that have been awarded in the primary season prior to tonight, Super Tuesday, of course. Now looking at the Republicans. We'll begin in Illinois. The NBC News projection is that Senator John McCain will win that one, and the early vote suggests he will win it handily, but it is very early, 97% still outstanding. New Jersey, as we suggested to you earlier, has been called for John McCain over Romney, with Huckabee placing a distant third in the first 10th of actual hard voting. Massachusetts, of course, Mitt Romney was governor there and has a sizable lead with 15% of the vote in. He is the projected winner by NBC News in Massachusetts. In Connecticut, John McCain projected, the adjoining nutmeg state, going handily with a quarter of its vote in to McCain over Romney, with Huckabee barely placing there. And in Delaware, a handy victory according to now well over 50%, pushing 60% of the vote in the Republican primary, and the NBC News projection is John McCain in Delaware. It is too close to call in Missouri between Huckabee and McCain. And a very low vote count so far, with an even smaller differential of only 500 votes between the two men. And also too close to call in Oklahoma. Again, between McCain and Huckabee, and a very tight difference with 20% of that vote in. Also closing the caucuses and the other primary votes, as you look at the Republican board, patchy at best among the four candidates still standing in the Republican field. Delaware has now just been called. Let's go to that one. Delaware and the Democrats, NBC News projecting that Barack Obama will win the state of Delaware. That had previously been too close to call. Give that one in the land of the DuPonts at a 50-45 split, with 2/3 of the actual vote already counted by adept and hardworking Delaware vote processors. Barack Obama projected, the NBC projected winner of the state of Delaware Democratic primary 2008. Chris?
Let me now try to look through a glass darkly at what's happened so far tonight. And what's happened so far tonight on the Republican side is basically a series of regional victories by Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas, in the South, winning in West Virginia, Alabama, and in Arkansas. That's a regional victory for him. He's very strong in the Bible Belt. John McCain winning in the Northeast, and of course winning in Illinois, states that the Republican Party has had a very hard time in recent presidential elections getting close to winning. So if you're against McCain's chances, you have a case to make. He won Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, New Jersey states the Republicans just don't seem to carry these days. Now, on the Democratic side, it's fascinating. Nothing big has happened tonight so far in terms of discerning who's going to win tonight, if that word win means something tonight, in terms of picking up states, because Hillary Clinton has done something that a lot of people would have found unimaginable looking at it from the outside. That's beat Ted Kennedy in Massachusetts, beat John Kerry in Massachusetts. She did both of that tonight. She won apparently handily up there in that Bay State, which tells you that her base of support, and a base of support earned by her and her husband, the former President Bill Clinton, is very, very strong in Massachusetts. Once again, Ted Kennedy has sailed against the wind and lost in an attempt to try to bring his influence to bear in Massachusetts, which is so interesting here tonight. And the states where Obama has won, he's won in Delaware, Georgia, Illinois is home state, no surprise there. Hillary Clinton has won in Oklahoma, no surprise there, and in Tennessee, and in her home state of Arkansas, where she was First Lady, and of course in New York, where she's the U.S. Senator. No big surprises tonight, but the news so far, as I said, the Republicans are breaking up their victories according to regional favorites, and the Democrats have yet to make a clear choice tonight that we can discern looking at the results so far, except Hillary Clinton has avoided losing in Massachusetts by beating the Kennedys. A very impressive victory for her in the Bay State. Joining us right now to analyze the latest wave of results, David Gregory, Chief White House Correspondent for NBC News. David.
Interesting, Chris. In New York, everybody trying to lay claim to the change mantle in this election. Well, in New York, if your top priority was who can bring change, 2-to-1 margin goes for Barack Obama, even in Hillary Clinton's home state. Not going to change the result, but interesting flavor. More flavor from around the country. We see it in toss-up states that we're waiting for, like Arizona and New Mexico. You got Barack Obama performing very well in the white vote as well. The key to those states, of course, the Latino vote. Still, you have the edge for Hillary Clinton there. We talk about the various strategies. Let's look on the Republican side tonight. You talked about the regional aspect to this, and we see that Mike Huckabee, who set out to win the South, be the South's favorite son, is doing well there. Whether that just helps him or does it also help John McCain, we'll find out. John McCain doing well in the Northeast, but it appears that he wasted time going to Massachusetts trying to get in Mitt Romney's face. He doesn't win there. Maybe that time is better spent down in Georgia, which is still a tight contest. What about Romney's strategy tonight? We are waiting for some key results tonight. Colorado and Minnesota. That's part of the Romney firewall, if you will, tonight. Part of that firewall was West Virginia. That's something that Mike Huckabee took today, not Mitt Romney, so we watch those states closely as well. Chris?
Okay, thank you, David Gregory.
All right, let's go back to Lester Holt with more from our exit polling, this time on the issues of race and gender. Some of the experts are saying this is perhaps not the key element to it as it might have been in the past, but it may have been succeeding, as we were discussing, Chris, with Bill Richardson, the prospect that the key demographic breakdown tonight is going to be age. We're going to get to Lester Holt in a moment.
Even among Latinos, as he pointed out, it's fascinating, and it's to a large extent refreshing to hear that people are not voting the way their parents vote. They're actually opening up their minds and hearts to a possible different pattern of voting in every group, it seems.
I believe that would be the idea of everybody having their own vote.
And thinking for themselves. Mommy, daddy, don't. Actually, the fascinating thing, as I said earlier tonight, was that it used to be you told your kids, damn it, get out there and get registered and vote. Be a good citizen. Now, in many cases, we're hearing anecdotally of kids calling up their parents saying, would you get involved for this candidate? Would you get your butt in gear and do something for the country? It is inspiring to hear that the young are leading the old in patriotism of the best kind, I think.
You didn't start to say but. All right, now Lester Holt is ready with more of that exit polling, the issues again, race and gender. Lester?
All right, Keith, good evening again. In answer to the questions, are there gender and race gaps in the Democratic contest tonight? You bet there is, and we're going to show you how it breaks down nationally tonight. Women are in the majority, as they have been in all Democratic contests held so far. 57% of the voters are female, 43% are male. Tonight, Hillary Clinton leads among women by 6 points, 51% to 45%. As for men, they're breaking the other way and by a wider margin. Take a look at the numbers here. Barack Obama has a 9-point advantage among men, 53 to 42%. When we ask women and men about the role of gender in their vote, relatively few, just 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 men, say it was a factor. Now, what about race? Here you can see that Barack Obama leads among black voters by a big margin. He gets 80% of the ballots cast and just 17% for Hillary Clinton. The white vote goes to Hillary Clinton, but by a close margin. 51 to 44%. Obama's white support is running higher today than it did in the recent Florida and South Carolina primaries, where he got only about a quarter of the white vote. Also, Keith and Chris, as we mentioned earlier, in these Democratic primaries, Hispanic voters are breaking strongly for Hillary Clinton tonight.
Lester Holt with exit polling. Great, thanks, Lester. The Clinton camp has already put out a statement about Massachusetts, which has been called in their candidate's favor, describing it based on Chris's point about Senators Kennedy and Kerry campaigning for Obama, that Clinton won the state. The Clinton campaign is calling this one of the biggest surprises of the night, Massachusetts, which is, again, the law of diminishing and then reinflating expectations. 2 Clinton campaign headquarters in New York City. NBC's Kevin Kevin Cork is there. Kevin, good evening again.
Spot on analysis, Keith. You're right. They wanted to dial it down just a bit and say, hey, look, we're not going to play this up big, but you're right. They had every expectation of doing very well in Massachusetts, despite the endorsement of the Kennedy family for Barack Obama, or at least Senator Kennedy for Barack Obama, and they're very, very pleased about that tonight. They're also encouraged by something they're watching right now out of Missouri. They've been saying to me all evening long that, look, you're going to have to at least perform well in some of the places where you might expect large cities to really influence this particular race. In the state of Missouri right now, Senator Clinton is doing very, very well. They're pointing to that and some other performances that you pointed out tonight. They're feeling very good. Look, they recognize there will not be a decisive winner this evening, but this will go a long way toward determining which candidate has the momentum moving forward. Right now, it is early in the evening, granted. The Clinton staffers feel pretty good, Pete.
Kevin Cork at Clinton headquarters. That was not a foghorn behind Kevin. That was the band beginning to chime in. Now let's go out to Chicago. David Schuster following the Obama campaign there. David, good evening again to you.
Keith, good evening to you. They are, of course, watching the delegate count, but clearly the Obama campaign wants to win a popular vote in one of these states that they considered Clinton territory for no other reason than to help sort of energize their supporters here and across the country. So you're talking about California, Massachusetts, some disappointment there. They would love a victory in Missouri. They would love something in New Jersey or Connecticut. But Keith, in terms of the big picture, the Obama campaign is ecstatic tonight with the way the delegate count is shaping up, because they have felt all along if they can get a draw tonight, if they can either get within 75 or 100 delegates or even narrower, they can win a war of attrition with the amount of money that they've been raising, $32 million in January compared to $13 million for the Clinton campaign. They are absolutely convinced they can grind Hillary Clinton down, and that Obama, if he can spend some time in some of these states and go after 3 or 4 states at a time instead of 20, that, they believe, is in Obama's favor. Keith?
And also the media momentum wars that are being fought right as we speak, David. Delegates will do, or victories will do. David Schuster at Obama headquarters. Again, thank you. Chris.
Let's go to the Republicans now, and MSNBC's Tucker Carlson is following developments with John McCain in Phoenix tonight. I guess they don't want to hear what I said tonight, Tucker, that the states in which John McCain has been declared the victor tonight by NBC are states Republicans rarely carry in November.
That's right. There's no way around that. He's run strong in the Northeast. I think that was expected. I think tonight California will be one of those states that we look at carefully to judge the broader appeal of the McCain campaign. I think the evolving story of the night, though, is Mike Huckabee, who has been really the human firewall for the McCain campaign, keeping Mitt Romney at bay. At this point, Mike Huckabee, at this stage right now, has more delegates than Mitt Romney. We could foresee an outcome tonight where he wins 5 states. How does that change, or more maybe, how does that change the relationship between McCain and Huckabee, who have in some way informally been working as a tag team holding off Mitt Romney? If Mike Huckabee were to become a force, not perhaps the guy who's destined to become the nominee, but a force in his own right, what does that mean for John McCain? I think that's the development that the McCain people are watching at this moment as we wait for California's polls to close.
But what happens if Mitt Romney doesn't do much tonight at all? Really, and maybe he carries. Is California enough to keep him full throttle in this campaign?
Well, as the McCain people point out again and again, because they deeply resent the fact that he is self-financing this campaign to some extent, he can go on forever because he's rich. He's also a successful businessman who's obviously been pretty good at judging, risk and reward. And so I think, if he is seen as really failing tonight, it's over for Mitt Romney. But California, again, as I said earlier, is the state that McCain would like to win. They believe that would put this away, that he would be the nominee tomorrow morning, in effect, were he to really do well in California. But they seemed skittish about it. At least on the plane out here, they were saying there is some erosion in their numbers in the state of California. So that's really what I think people here are watching.
I love the way you said Romney's rich. I just love that. Anyway, thank you. I thought we were supposed to say well-to-do, I thought was the phrase we were supposed to use. Anyway, thank you, Tucker Carlson. For the view from the Romney campaign, we turn now to NBC's John Yang, who's up in Boston. John.
Chris, they're trying to put the best face on what's going on here tonight. The Romney folks are saying that this all points out the results so far, the trends so far, show that John McCain is underperforming. But the other side of that, of course, is that there are a lot of conservatives voting against John McCain, but they're also voting against Mitt Romney. They're voting for Mike Huckabee. And so that is going to be a dilemma for this campaign as they try to harness the conservative disaffection with John McCain, but at the same time competing for that vote with Mike Huckabee. And to Tucker's point about Romney being rich, at this moment he's next door at the Westin Hotel raising more money. So this campaign is still looking forward. They feel that the terrain gets more favorable to them after February 5th, after today, but they still haven't gotten through today yet. Chris?
Okay, thank you, John Yang. We're joined right now by NBC's Tom Brokaw for more on the fight between Romney and McCain. Tom, it really looks like a regional breakout where, I know it's cruel to say it, but John McCain seems to win in primaries where Republicans can't win generals and doesn't win where they generally win generals, which is in the South.
And the map now is moving west, which is a critical test not only for John McCain, because he should be able to pick up one of those states if he wants to continue as the front runner, but it's also important for Mitt Romney, because we're going to be going into his home territory of Utah. You can call that because he's an important member of the faith, the Mormon faith there, and he's the man who saved the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. But we also have Colorado coming up and, of course, California. I think the issue with Romney is one of the wags in the Republican Party said to me that he reminds him of those men who appear in pharmaceutical commercials with a doctor's coat on. I'm not really a conservative, but I play one on the campaign trail. And he's gotten a lot of help from the talk show circuit, as you know, and they may have overplayed their hand a little bit. I was looking at Rush Limbaugh's website today, and he has a picture of John McCain surrounded by Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rudy Giuliani. And the caption says, it's pretty plain that John McCain likes to surround himself with liberals. Now, I don't think either Rudy Giuliani or Arnold Schwarzenegger will be invited to be a groomsman at a Jane Fonda wedding. I don't think that they're going to fit into that category. So, we've seldom seen the Republican Party, as I've been saying this evening, in such disarray, if you will, in terms of trying to settle on who they want as their candidate, and this will go on.
Doesn't it seem like they even disagree on mission now? I mean, almost any politician, as you know, as you cover them, want to win as sort of a basic necessity of political life. But these talk show people like Rush Limbaugh, it seems to me, Tom, what do you think? They may enjoy being in opposition more than in defense of a government.
Well, and it gives them a good deal to talk about. Look, Rush Limbaugh is an American original. He's been an important voice for the conservatives in this country. But at the same time, and this will come as a surprise to Rush, I know, I have a lot of conservative friends that I've grown up with over the years. Any number of them have called me in the course of the last 6 months or so and said, the system is broken. It's time for a change. We've got to do something different. These are business people, and they're cultural conservatives as well, and they're looking for something to break what they think is a kind of gridlock that exists in Washington, in which people are worrying about issues that are on the margins of their real concerns. Chris, today, the stock market took its biggest single drop in 2 years. That's on the minds of these voters tonight, however they voted today, and it will be on their minds again tomorrow morning.
Well, people are breaking from their traces, aren't they? Thank you, Tom Brokaw. Keith?
We continue to await results in key races. We've got the closings coming up at 10 o'clock in addition to calls on earlier races from 8 and 9. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday. NBC News projects John McCain has won the Republican primary in the state of New York. So a big 9 o'clock finish. The Republicans in New York projected for John McCain with an actual vote count still less than 1% and not meaning extraordinary amounts of information for you there. But the projection is, based on the exit polls and those key precincts, that this will be McCain's victory, another one tonight, when the evening is over. So let's go now to NBC News political director Chuck Todd on where the delegate race stands with this one. Chuck, rather?
Well, obviously, we got on the Democratic side, this has been where it's been a lot of mathematics, and we've been doing a lot of it working with the different campaigns. But first, I want to be able to tell you what the magic sort of number is for the night on the big, when you know who's won a majority of the delegates for the night. And that majority would be 840 delegates total. Out of 1678, 840 would give one of them a majority. And right now,
I'm going to cut you off because we have another call to make in New Jersey for the Democrats. This was one of the ones that has been poured over. It is Hillary Clinton in New Jersey, the tri-state trifecta for Senator Clinton, with now well over a quarter of the vote in and a sizable lead over Senator Obama, and that is now projected by NBC News. New Jersey to Hillary Clinton. We wanted to get you in there, Chuck, and interrupt you before you got too far into the math, which we now rejoin already in progress.
Fair enough. Well, as we were talking about that, we've got what the big number is for the night that people should follow when it comes to who won a majority of the delegates for the night. 1678 are up on the Democrats, meaning 840 would be the majority number. And already the Obama folks feel like they're performing ahead of pace. Just looking at two states individually, and that is Illinois and Georgia, they got over 170 delegates just out of those two states, which is about 20 more than they expected. So far, the only two states that the Clinton folks feel like they've overperformed in are in Arkansas and in Massachusetts. What's interesting about what we're seeing with the Clinton delegate totals is when you look at a place like Tennessee, she won it very handily, but instead she's only going to get a 38-30 split. In fact, in doing the math, in New York and New Jersey, since they're just called, frankly, all the boiler rooms, including what we're trying to do, it's a little too early to figure out the congressional delegate splits. But in the states that we've been able to do that, and that's about 8, including Illinois, Georgia, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Massachusetts, Arkansas, Alabama, and Delaware, and among those states, we had 315 delegates, an estimation between what we've done with the Clinton and Obama folks and our own numbers, to 228 for Clinton. Now, again, we still have a lot more delegates to count. New York, that didn't include New York, that doesn't include Connecticut, and it doesn't include New Jersey. But the numbers are starting to come in, and the Obama people feel pretty good.
Chuck Todd at the map, great thanks. Let me correct something I may have implied there, didn't mean to, in the tri-state trifecta. The tri-state trifecta is not over. We haven't called Connecticut yet. New York and New Jersey went to Hillary Clinton. Also of note from 8 o'clock, Massachusetts, or 9 o'clock, from 8 o'clock rather, Massachusetts went to Hillary Clinton, but we do not have a call in between. It's too close to call in Connecticut. So we've got that housekeeping done, Chris.
But on the Republican side, it looks like John McCain has become the Amtrak candidate for president, having swept right down the coast from New York. The Metroliner candidate, better said, the Metroliner candidate, John McCain, has won in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, all the way down the line there. Also in Connecticut, if you go a bit further north. Anyway, Newsweek's Howard Fundman is in our campaign listening post in Washington tonight on how the Clinton campaign did beat Teddy Kennedy in his home ground. How'd they do it, Howard?
Well, they did it with the Beacon Hill boys, Chris, you know, with the Massachusetts legislature and the local politicians, while the big national names, Ted Kennedy and John Kerry, couldn't deliver in their home state.
So Michael Hooley's more important than Ted Kennedy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's all those wise guys.
The ground game, the Irish kids.
All those wise guys, you know, Steve Lynch, the congressman, you know them all. Those are the people who won it. And what's fascinating to me in talking on the phone and emailing back and forth to Democrats around the country in Massachusetts and elsewhere is that, you know, last week we were all talking what a great piece of theater it was that Ted Kennedy came out and endorsed Barack Obama, that electrifying event at American University. But I think it may be possible, looking back on this, that Teddy's endorsement was not that much of a help to Obama for the reason you were talking about earlier, Chris, which is that people want to break out of old think. They want to break out of the old molds. And as valued as the Kennedys are in the Democratic Party, they're an old mold too, and I don't think necessarily helped Obama. Now, specifically, when Ted Kennedy endorsed Barack Obama, they asked Kennedy to see if he could reel in Bill Richardson, who we had on in the last hour. Bill Richardson stayed unreeled in. Teddy called him repeatedly, I'm told, but Richardson said, I'm going to go watch the Super Bowl with Bill Clinton. He's staying neutral. And Teddy didn't deliver, John Kerry didn't deliver in their home state. So I think one of the ironic results of tonight could be that while the Kennedys are respected by the Democrats, the Kennedys don't have quite as much pull either in the inside game or the outside game as all the punditocracy who were reared on the Kennedys thought they do.
But Howard, if that's now the conventional wisdom, let me be the contrarian and go against the latest conventional wisdom. I'll throw out the Obama talking point.
Can I go against everything Howard just said?
Well, no, just wait till go against what I say, and then you can be the contrarian.
All right.
All right. The Alabama Democratic projection is in before any of this contrarian or anything else. The Alabama Democratic projection is in, and Barack Obama is projected as the winner in Alabama in the Democratic primary there, which closed at 8 o'clock and was 2 too early to call until this point. Now we have almost a quarter of the vote in and a sizable lead, nearly doubling that of Hillary Clinton in the actual vote count. Back to Howard Fineman. The point from the Obama campaign was that Kennedy was as much of use to them in terms of nationally reeling in Latino voters. That's their point, not mine. Here's one that is of interest. Before the last poll conducted before that Kennedy endorsement in Massachusetts, Obama was polling at about 22%. If he does any better in Massachusetts than 22%, could you not turn around and say, yeah, it actually did have an impact positively in Massachusetts, there just wasn't enough time?
Well, there's never enough time. I think when you have when you have the governor of the state, this was also a repudiation of Deval Patrick, the governor. Usually governors have pretty strong local machines. The governor of the state was beaten by the legislature and the local guys. So I think that triumvirate just didn't deliver. And if you look at the Hispanic votes, while it's true that Obama has made some inroads there, my understanding from talking to some experts in this is that Ted Kennedy and the Kennedys were very helpful with American-born Latinos who watch English language television and who watched all the coverage of the various Kennedys endorsing Obama. Meanwhile, on Spanish language television, Hillary was getting very good coverage. And while there may be an age difference, there's also a language difference. And perhaps paradoxically, my understanding is that the immigrants, the ones who still speak Spanish, were sticking with Hillary. And if you look across the board tonight, Keith, it's the Latino community is the only one of the demographic groups that has really, really stuck with Hillary Clinton. 2-to-1 margins in most states in the West, not quite that much in New Jersey and elsewhere, but enough to allow Hillary to be fighting Obama to a standstill tonight. And I don't think the Kennedys helped all that much. That's
well, let's wait till we hear the returns from California tonight to decide how far the reach of the Kennedys is. I think we're going to have to see what impact Maria Shriver had and Caroline Kennedy had out there when they appeared this weekend with Oprah and, of course, with Michelle Obama. By the way, I think when we get to the elections next week in the Virginia, Maryland area, D.C. area, I think you're going to see a big impact of Ted Kennedy's performance at American University. So, Howard, be a little careful there before you undercut the reach and power of Teddy Kennedy.
I'm just here in the listening post.
I know. We have to be critical. We have to be astute.
No, I'm just listening. I'm just
but
listening.
We have to be cautious
That's what people are saying.
Thank you for listening.
I'm just kidding. But I think it's great that you're that tough and cutting when it comes to the Kennedys. Howard, thank you very much.
Okay.
When we return, Joe Scarborough and our panel, plus much more from our exit poll, and later, the NC Chairman Howard Dean's coming back, the former governor of Vermont, the former, well, he was the front runner last time around. You're watching MSNBC's live coverage of Super Duper Tuesday. Welcome back to MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday. Let's look at the latest results right now. Here they come. In New Jersey, Hillary Clinton has won. According to our projections, Hillary Clinton, the winner in New Jersey there. A very tough battle for her, a very important win for Hillary Clinton, who's just carried New Jersey. In New York, her home state, no surprise there. Hillary Clinton, the winner in New York, the Empire State, has given it to the home favorite, Hillary Clinton. In Illinois, that other favorite from the hometown favorite, Barack Obama has won his home state quite handily. It looks like 2-to-1 based upon the early returns. Barack Obama winning his home state of Illinois. In the Bay State of Massachusetts, Hillary Clinton has pulled an upset against the Kennedy family, the Kerry people. A big upset win for her against the establishment. However, she was favored in the earlier polls. Let's look at Georgia right now. Barack Obama has won a big victory down there, doing very well among white voters as well as African Americans. The big winner, Barack Obama in Georgia. Let's take a look at the Republican victories tonight. John McCain has won in New York State. The Empire State, New York, goes to John McCain tonight. And another big state, Illinois, has gone for John McCain. A victory for John McCain, carrying the Midwestern state of Illinois. And New Jersey has also gone to John McCain, beginning a pattern of East Coast victories by McCain. Let's take a look at Massachusetts, another victory for John McCain. He's won just up and down the East Coast. I'm sorry, my mistake. Mitt Romney has held on to the state where he was a governor for one term. Mitt Romney winning that one state on the Northeast corridor. In Alabama, right now, It's going to Mike Huckabee. He has done well in the South tonight. Mike Huckabee, surprising expectations, very much a competitor tonight. Mike Huckabee winning in Alabama. Also, Mike Huckabee, the winner in Arkansas, where he was governor. Mike Huckabee beginning to win very well in the region of the South, where he's from, in the Bible Belt. Now let's take a look at too close to call states. This is Georgia. A three-way tie developing throughout the evening here among Huckabee, McCain, and Mitt Romney. A three-way race, too close to call in Georgia. And now to the panel. Let's go right now to Joe Scarborough. It is an interesting evening in both sides. It's hard to say. There's clarity there, Joe.
Yeah, Chris, you know, you're bringing up a great point here that so far, no surprises on the Republican side regionally. Everybody expected this morning that John McCain would do well tonight in the Northeast, in blue states. Everybody expected Mike Huckabee to do very well in the Southeast. They expected Mitt Romney to hold Massachusetts, everybody except John McCain, who wasted a day or two campaigning there. The big question is, what happens as we go west? That's when there will be some clarity on the Republican side. But thus far on the Democratic side, Gene, some clarity. These exit polls, stunning. Gender gap. Hillary only wins among women 51 to 45%, but Barack Obama wins by 11 points among men, 53 to 42%. And then when you go race, 80% of African Americans for Obama, only 17 for Hillary. Whites, 51% for Hillary, 44% for Obama. And the young voters going overwhelmingly to Barack Obama. Demographics are breaking down in a way that Barack Obama can expect a big night across the country.
You know, I think the Obama campaign would be happy with those numbers. On the other hand, you know, Hillary Clinton held New Jersey. She won Massachusetts. She's holding serve. And you know, we'll have to see. I mean, the numbers we've been flashing on the screen, it looks like Obama is ahead in Connecticut, but that can't be called yet. And we're still waiting for the polls to close out west. So I think it is entirely possible that what we'll end up with is what both campaigns said we'll end up with, which is a mixed result at the end of the night, a war of attrition, the ground game going on. About those demographic figures, there's one figure that's very much in Hillary Clinton's favor, which is Latinos voters go 61% for Clinton, 38% for Obama. Now that's better for Obama than he's seen in prior nights.
Right.
But it's still a significant
It's still bad right now.
Yeah.
But I go back to 2 weeks ago, Pat Buchanan, after South Carolina. You were concerned the numbers weren't adding up for Barack Obama. He was getting black voters, but not white voters. Things seem to be breaking in his direction right now. Demographics are coming over to him. More women, more white voters, Hispanics slowly breaking in his direction. These are good trend lines.
Well, they're tremendous trend lines for him. Look at the African-American vote is now 80 to 17.
You think that Hillary was a Republican?
Yeah, it's Barry Goldwater territory.
That is Barry Goldwater territory.
But the white vote's gone 51 to 44. I mean, he's getting 44% of the vote. And as you say, 61 to 38. That's not 2 to 1 for Hillary now. It's more like, 6 to 4. Yeah, so 3 to 2. So all those are good. But look, Hillary's won Arkansas, Massachusetts, New York, Oklahoma, Tennessee, New Jersey. She's still leading in states, but where Barack Obama, like Georgia and Illinois, where he wins, he's running up the score on her, and he's pulling out tremendous numbers of delegates.
And it's a tie. At the end of the night, if it's a tie goes to Obama, does it not? Right. There is such a feeling, Rachel, that the longer this race goes, the more it benefits Obama.
What you end up with tonight, what it looks like now, if we could predict, it looks like not a landslide either way, but a very different story to tell about electability for both candidates because of the way these demographic figures are shaping up.
And McCain is not closing the sale.
No, he's not. That really is. Chris, that's the big news. John McCain certainly not following up on his Florida victory to close the sale tonight. He's a regional candidate. Unfortunately for him, he's a regional candidate in the bluest of blue states.
Right. You know, I was just thinking, Joe, that he wins on the Atlantic coast. There's Atlantic Ocean water nearby. New Hampshire, South Carolina, Florida, and now tonight, Connecticut, Delaware, except for Illinois, New Jersey, New York, every state that he does well in except Illinois, every state he's won except has Atlantic Ocean water lapping up against it. That is not a strong appeal for a Republican candidate for president. Anyway, Joe, thank you, and thanks to the panel. Kevin Madden is National Press Secretary for the Romney campaign, and now it's your turn, Kevin. I'm looking at the regional appeal of John McCain on the East Coast. Right. I'm looking at the regional appeal of Huckabee in the South. Where is Romney country?
Well, I've been arguing all day, Chris, that it's going to be a long night, because I think as we move across these time zones and we get out to the western states, places like Colorado, places like Montana and California, we're going to see some. I think we're going to see some good numbers come in for Governor Romney. We've made a lot of. We had a lot of travel out there this week, right after Florida. We had that great debate in California. So let's see where California comes in. I think tomorrow we're going to be counting delegates, and we're going to feel like we're going to be in a good position to move on through this campaign. And if anything, there's a big question mark after John McCain. This order of inevitability that was afforded him outside of Florida is now gone, and this is a very fluid race.
What, Kevin, is this stridency that has developed over the subject of the Bob Dole letter and the terminology between your campaign and the McCain campaign in respect to the Huckabee campaign? Has that been portrayed as fierce, or is it actually fierce?
No, I think, this is what happens on election days. Everybody's looking to try to drive some sort of message on that during this 24-hour cycle that we're caught in now. And I think Governor Romney was very clear that what he was talking about was an insider versus outsider Washington message, and that he's the best candidate right now to lead a very renewed party, a party that can bring a message of bringing change to Washington from the outside, and that John McCain is not going to get away by pushing a message of inevitability like we saw back in 1996. Everybody knows that Bob Dole is a great man. He was a great senator, and he's something that everybody respects. So the McCain campaign clearly overreached on that one, and it's just, I think it'll end after today.
Let me ask you, Kevin, about California. It's a long way off perhaps tonight for all of us trying to cover this. Its importance for your campaign, if you can.
I'm sorry, Chris, say that again.
The importance of California to Romney's future in this election process.
Well, sure. I think the argument that we made in California is essentially emblematic of what we believe is the important debate that's going on within the Republican Party. And that is, who's the best candidate to bring together social conservatives, economic conservatives, and national security conservatives? If you look at a lot of those congressional districts out there in a state that goes district by district, those are the kind of Republicans that make up the Republican Party's strength out there. People who really care about lower taxes. John McCain has voted against Bush tax cuts. People who care about strengthening the family. John McCain has always been somewhat unwilling or unreliable on those issues. And national security conservatives, people who really think that it's important to have a party of a strong military. And if you're going to have a strong military, you have to have a strong economy. And who's better on economic issues than Governor Romney? So that's the core of our message, and that's why we think California is an important state.
Do you have a sense that this is Mitt Romney's last crack at the presidential race? Do you think he might run again if he loses?
Well, look, Chris, that is the best way Chris Matthews is always.
No, but can you tell?
Look, I think right now we're focused on this race. We're focused on.
I know you are, but can't you sense whether
Republicans now?
Can't you sense whether he's willing to get right back in the scrum come November 9th and go right back after the presidency if he misses this time?
Look, we're going to win this time, but here's the important point to your question. The candidate who's the candidate to bring together this party and to rebuild it so that we have a new vision, a conservative vision, a center-right coalition for the next 10 years, Chris, is Mitt Romney.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin Madden, national spokesman, press secretary, in fact, for Mitt Romney.
And we're joined now by the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Howard Dean. Governor, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me on.
The theory that's being pressed at this point, the early headline writing about this night in the Democratic Party, react to it. Here's the one sentence: Hillary Clinton held serve.
I think it's much too early to tell who did what. We don't have any idea what the delegate count is. I think there's been 6 or 10, maybe 10 states projected. There's 21 to come in. So it's an early night, and this is not going to be decided tonight. It's going to be decided sometime in 3 or 4 weeks. And whoever it is, we'll be ready to win. I think, I was interested in hearing Mitt Romney's press person. The one thing I agree with him on is Mitt Romney is the candidate of change, because he's changed his mind on just about everything you can change your mind on. And, we'll see what happens, whether we run into Mitt or McCain or whatever. Honestly, it's just 4 more years of George Bush. They're all in favor of tax cuts for people who don't need them. They've all forgotten the middle class. They all supported the president's veto of children's health insurance. They're all for staying in Iraq. McCain said for 100 years. This is going to be about whether you want a third term for George W. Bush or you want real change in this country, and that's Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama.
And there's Governor Dean holding serve. You mentioned Massachusetts. Can you give us an analysis of that, with the projections being that Senator Clinton won there? The instant analysis of that has been that this suggests that the influence of an endorsement by Senator Kennedy, members of the family, even Governor Patrick there in Massachusetts did not significantly impact the outcome of the primary among the Democrats. Is that your analysis of it?
My own experience in campaigns is that endorsements bring you attention, but they don't necessarily sway voters. Voters make up their own mind. They really do. Endorsements are really helpful because they give you a national platform, but they don't sway voters. Voters are always going to make up their own mind. If you really want to sway voters, it's the people that they know very well personally. That has bigger sway over voters than endorsements.
One more posit, and then I'll turn you over to the tender mercies of Mr. Matthews. That Senator Obama, at this point in the evening, to be able to say he is in no worse position in the campaign, his campaign versus Senator Clinton as of than he was as of this morning, needs to have a major victory outside of the South tonight. Needs something in California. Needs Connecticut to go his way. Needs Missouri. Do you buy that argument?
No, what I buy is at the end of this night, which will actually end sometime tomorrow around noon, we're going to know who got how many delegates. And I think both candidates have focused intensely on the delegates. And obviously now, after the fact, they're going to spin who won what. But it's how many delegates you have. You've got to get to 2025, and whoever gets there first is going to be the next president of the United States.
You know, Governor, you and I grew up in a party, watching a party that has basically had its base among labor union people, working people, regular people of average income, and I was stunned by looking at these exit polls across the country. Look at these numbers. I'm sure you'll be surprised too. The percentage of people who voted in the Connecticut Democratic primary, 57% were college graduates, 58% in New Jersey, 60% in New York, 61% in Massachusetts. It just seems like the Democratic Party voters seem to have gone upscale. The neighborhood has been gentrified, and the people who are voting are from a very high economic and social echelon. Is that good news for the Democratic Party that it's gotten so gentrified?
Well, honestly, I believe that one of the reasons, there's two reasons for those numbers, I think. One is that you're seeing a lot of Republicans and independents now vote in the Democratic primary where that's permitted. Because they really believe that you got to have change, and they don't think you can possibly get it with a Republican primary. The other is this is in the Northeast, which has got the highest educational levels of any place in the country. So, you know, I don't know what to make of those polls. I never think it's a bad thing to have smart people supporting you, but I do think the numbers are probably skewed as, one, they're from the Northeast, and two, I think there are probably significant numbers of independents and Republicans who are voting in the Democratic primary as well.
So you're not worried that the college crowd, if you will, gown is overwhelming town, and that the support for Barack here, such as it exists, isn't a reflection of a skewed electorate?
I think every candidate on both sides has particular niches in the electorate that they appeal to. And whoever the nominee is of our party, and I would say this is true of the Republicans as well, is going to have to broaden their own particular base. Right. And that's part of my job, is to help them do that.
You might have it cut out for you based upon these numbers. I just wonder where regular people are in this. There aren't the average percentage of this country, unfortunately for the country, it doesn't include that many college graduates.
No, that's right. That's true.
Anyway, Keith.
Howard Dean, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, thank you kindly for being with us, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
We have an unfortunate confluence of news and politics tonight, if you'd heard this. At least 4 counties in Tennessee had to close polls early tonight because of severe weather. And in fact, we're now being advised by Tennessee Emergency Management and the Sheriff's Department of Fayette County. This is video you're seeing, home video of an extraordinary storm. We should probably lose that banner there to give you a better idea of it. From Germantown, Tennessee, there is 1 fatality in the state of Tennessee in Fayette County after a tornado hit. A Union University dorm has collapsed. 30 people trapped at Jackson, Tennessee. 16 people also reported injured there. Reports from state officials of as many as 50 people trapped at the Jackson Oak Retirement Community. And a runway at the International Airport at Memphis has been closed. The major headline there is 1 fatality in Tennessee after a severe weather, strong storms, possibly some tornadoes hitting mostly western Tennessee, but obviously, given the names thrown out just there, throughout the state, and 1 fatality at at Fayette County, and the home video you're seeing of the damage, extraordinary damage tonight in Germantown, which is affecting a lot more than just the closing of 4 counties' polling stations in Tennessee for the Super Tuesday primary. Up next, we'll get back to the primary, to the polling data and the exit polls in particular. More with our panel. This is MSNBC's continuing coverage of Super Tuesday. More in a moment. NBC News has projected the Republican winner in the primary in Oklahoma, Senator John McCain. So to fulfill Chris's estimation, here is a state that is not touched by the Atlantic Ocean, his second of the night, 6th overall of the night for McCain, with nearly 70% of the vote in. It would be a slim margin right now, slim margin of victory over Mike Huckabee, with Mitt Romney placing a fairly strong third under those circumstances. Again, the Republican primary in Oklahoma is John McCain's, according to the NBC News projection, where the polls had closed nearly 2 hours ago. Let's look a little bit more on the Republican vote, breaking it down with the exit polling and more from Lester Holt. Lester?
Let's pick up right where you were there, Keith. John McCain has picked up some major wins tonight in states including New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, but it's very close in many other states, including some border and southern states. Part of the reason for that, there's a big divide in the Republican Party along ideological lines. This is still a very conservative electorate. In voting coast to coast, 64% identify themselves as conservative, including about a third of that number who say they are very conservative. 27% are moderate, and 10% say they are liberal. As you might expect, John McCain is doing well among moderates and liberals. He's getting a majority there, but it's a different story among the conservatives. With voters who say they are somewhat conservative, McCain and Romney are very close, with McCain at 40% and Romney at 36%. Mike Huckabee has 17% in this group. And in that nearly 1/3 of the GOP that calls itself very conservative, there the vote is breaking heavily for Mitt Romney. He is getting nearly half of the vote, 47% to 25% for Huckabee, just 19% for John McCain. So Mitt Romney is pulling in those arch conservatives in the battle with John McCain to be the conservative standard bearer of the party. All this points, Keith and Chris, to a potentially difficult problem for John McCain if he should prevail. Conservatives in the GOP may eventually make their peace with him, but from what we're seeing tonight, those folks are not quite there yet.
Problems in capital letters, Lester. Lester Holt with the exit polls. Thank you. Let's bring in David Gregory, chief White House correspondent for NBC News. This construction does, in fact, I've used this analogy before, it looks like an M.C. Escher drawing. The conservatives don't like the guy who has some conservative credentials, but the very conservatives like the guy who didn't have the conservative credentials. It's a real problem as it goes forward for the Republicans, is it not?
Well, it really is, especially because John McCain is seeing this rebellion on the right and a movement afoot, whether that's in the place of Mitt Romney or in the person of Mitt Romney or Mike Huckabee, being the ones who can stop John McCain. We've talked a lot tonight about Mike Huckabee being a kind of blocker for John McCain against Mitt Romney, but meanwhile, it is Mike Huckabee who's putting together this southern strategy toward the nomination. We'll see how Oklahoma goes in terms of the conservative vote for John McCain away from that Amtrak corridor that we've talked about for McCain on the East Coast. And it's interesting, if you look in a state like Alabama, how some of the numbers are breaking down. According to our exit poll, John McCain is the preferred choice in terms of who's most qualified to be commander-in-chief at 45%, but Mike Huckabee comes in second at 32% ahead of Mitt Romney, so he places well there. We look at the states that Mike Huckabee has won: Arkansas, Alabama, West Virginia, which was a Romney state, very competitive in Georgia and Missouri, though in Missouri he's having a difficult time in the major population centers. But a note of caution here, in a state like Alabama that Mike Huckabee wins, John McCain still likely to take away delegates, given the fact that he's not over 50%. Huckabee isn't in Alabama, and therefore it becomes a proportional system. So John McCain still takes away delegates. So at the end of the night, Mike Huckabee making a real stand here within the party, particularly among conservatives who don't like John McCain. But how many delegates does he get at the end of this contest? That's a big question, Keith.
Yeah, and if it's very conservative as opposed to conservative, how come Romney has not done better than he has?
Well, that's
statistically?
Right. And you look at Georgia, for instance, if you combine the somewhat and very conservative, you see it's a real split between Huckabee and Romney. Again, that favors John McCain in a tight race in Georgia where he is splitting, Huckabee is splitting that anti-McCain conservative vote with Romney.
And hence the Romney committee anger at Huckabee as the seeming stalking horse.
Right.
David Gregory, White House correspondent, and analyzing the Republicans and conservatives versus very conservatives. Thank you, David.
Sure.
Just a few moments, the polls are going to close in Utah. We'll have those results. Plus, we expect to be hearing from some of the candidates in the next hour, hour and a half. Barack Obama may be at 11:30 Eastern Time. And we'll continue. MSNBC's live coverage of Super Tuesday resumes after this.